The crowd buzzed with excitement as the world's greatest minds gathered at the annual Tech Innovators Conference. Bright lights, cameras, and the sharp scent of fresh coffee filled the air. But in the front row, one figure stood out amongst the crowd. A 12-year-old boy, wearing a slightly oversized suit that he'd borrowed from his older brother. His name was Ethan Harris. Ethan wasn't supposed to be here. He was just a kid, sitting amongst tech moguls, scientists, and CEOs. His presence was almost as out of place as a spark in a hurricane, yet his wide eyes and the quiet confidence in his posture suggested that this was exactly where he was meant to be. The conference's star speaker, Elon Musk, stood at the podium. The audience was hanging on his every word, their eyes fixed on him. As usual, Musk was charismatic, his voice cutting through the air like a hot knife through butter. People love to talk about the potential of young minds, the so-called next generation of innovators. But let's face it, youth is overrated. You can't solve the world's most complex problems when you haven't even seen how the world works yet, Musk said, his words laced with his signature mix of arrogance and truth. The crowd chuckled, nodding in agreement. Ethan shifted in his seat, a faint frown pulling at his lips. He wasn't amused. He'd heard people say that before, that kids couldn't do big things, that they didn't have the experience, and it always made him angry. The chatter around him grew louder, but Ethan couldn't focus on anything else but Musk's words. He'd always believed that age didn't matter. Genius had no timeline. If a 12-year-old could think of something no one else had, why couldn't he? Why couldn't he be the one to change the world? With a sudden burst of confidence, Ethan stood up. He wasn't sure where the courage came from, but it surged through him like electricity. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "Mr. Musk," he called out, his voice surprisingly steady. The crowd fell silent as they turned to him. Musk raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Yes? Do you have something to say, young man?" he asked, his tone condescending but curious. Ethan swallowed hard, but he didn't back down. "I think you're wrong. Age doesn't matter. A kid like me can solve real problems just like anyone else. You'll see. I'm going to prove you wrong." There was a brief pause. A ripple of disbelief ran through the crowd. Some people laughed. Others exchanged skeptical glances. Musk, however, didn't seem amused. "You think you can outsmart me?" Musk asked, leaning forward slightly. "What's your idea, kid?" Ethan's heart raced, but he didn't hesitate. "I'm going to solve the energy crisis. I don't know how yet, but I'll figure it out. You'll see." The room erupted in murmurs. A few chuckles escaped from the crowd, and someone in the back shouted, "Yeah, right?" But Ethan could hardly hear them. He was too focused on Musk, waiting for the reaction. Musk, however, didn't laugh. Instead, his face darkened slightly, and his eyes narrowed as if sizing Ethan up. "All right," Musk said with a smirk. "I'll tell you what. If you can come up with a working clean energy solution in the next 3 months, I'll publicly acknowledge that you've got something special. But I'm not holding my breath." The audience fell into a stunned silence. Musk had just thrown down the gauntlet. "You're on," Ethan replied quickly, before he could second-guess himself. Musk raised his hands, mocking an applause. "We'll see, kid," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Good luck with that." As the room began to buzz again, Ethan's mind raced. He had just done something crazy. He'd just put himself up against Elon Musk, the man who was known for revolutionizing electric cars and private space travel. Everyone in the room knew that Musk wasn't just a tech mogul. He was a genius. And here Ethan was, a 12-year-old kid who hadn't even built a high school science project yet, challenging him. But Ethan didn't feel fear. Instead, he felt something else. A spark. This was his moment. The moment he'd been waiting for. The crowd slowly dispersed as the event went on, but Ethan didn't sit down. He walked out into the hallway, where a few reporters were still gathering outside the doors. A reporter approached him, microphone in hand. "Do you really think you can solve the energy crisis, young man?" she asked, her tone skeptical. Ethan straightened his back. "I'll prove it," he said, his voice firm. "What would you do if you had the chance to challenge one of the world's greatest minds? Could a young kid like Ethan really change the world? Let me know what you think in the comments below." Ethan sat in his small room late that night, his face illuminated only by the glow of his computer screen. His mother had already gone to bed, exhausted from another long shift at the diner. Ethan didn't mind the solitude. In fact, it was when he felt most alive. He wasn't like the other kids in his small town. While they played sports or hung out at the mall, Ethan spent his nights hunched over books, coding on his computer, and solving problems that seemed too big for someone his age. He was drawn to challenges, the ones that others dismissed as impossible. He had always been different. Ever since he was little, Ethan's mind worked in ways that others didn't understand. While his classmates were learning basic multiplication in 3rd grade, Ethan was figuring out how to build simple robots from spare parts. He didn't have a lab or fancy equipment, just whatever he could get his hands on. His bedroom looked more like a chaotic workshop than a place to sleep. Wires, circuits, and books on artificial intelligence scattered everywhere. His mother, Julia Harris, had always supported him, even when she didn't fully understand what he was doing. "I don't know how you do it, kiddo," she would say with a smile, tucking him in at night. "But I know you're going to do something amazing one day." She worked hard every day to provide for him, juggling multiple jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Ethan knew his mother didn't have much, but what she did have, her love and unwavering belief in him, was enough to fuel his dreams. It wasn't always easy, though. The kids at school didn't understand him. They saw him as the weird, quiet kid who spent his time tinkering with gadgets rather than hanging out. But that didn't bother Ethan. He had his mind set on bigger things. He knew he was capable of something special. The problem was, nobody else saw it. Not yet, at least. As he clicked through lines of code, a familiar thought gnawed at him. His challenge with Elon Musk wasn't just about proving people wrong. It was about proving himself right. For years, he'd been told he was just a kid. "You're too young," they'd say. "You don't have the experience." But in that moment, standing before Musk in front of thousands, he had realized something. Age was just a number. Innovation wasn't bound by how many years you'd been alive. It was about the ideas you brought to the table. A soft knock on the door broke his concentration. Ethan glanced up, surprised. It was late, and his mother rarely interrupted his late-night work sessions. "Hey, champ," Julia said, poking her head through the door with a tired smile. "I just wanted to check on you." Ethan grinned. "I'm fine, Mom. Just working on some stuff." She stepped into the room, her eyes soft but filled with concern. "You know, you don't have to take on the world all by yourself," she said gently, sitting on the edge of his bed. "You've already proven to me how smart you are. But I don't want you to burn out, okay? You're just a kid." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. His mother had always believed in him, but sometimes her worry weighed on him. "I know, Mom, but this is my chance. I can't back down now. I need to prove that age doesn't matter." Julia sighed, but there was a look in her eyes, one that told him she understood. "I don't care how old you are. Just promise me you'll be careful, all right? You've got the whole world ahead of you." Ethan nodded, though his mind was already racing with plans for the prototype. "I promise. I'll make it work." She gave him a quick hug, and then stood up, brushing a stray lock of hair from his face. "Just remember, no matter what happens, I'm proud of you." After she left, Ethan sat back down at his desk, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He had a long way to go before he could present his clean energy solution. But now, more than ever, he was determined to prove not just to Musk, but to everyone, that being young didn't mean being powerless. He had something to offer the world. He started brainstorming. The first hurdle would be creating a system that could harness renewable energy more efficiently, using quantum computing, solar panels, and AI to predict energy demand and optimize supply. Ethan wasn't entirely sure how to make it all come together yet, but he had an idea. The real question was, could he make it work in time? The next morning, Ethan woke up to an unexpected flood of messages. News outlets had picked up the story of his challenge to Musk. Headlines like, "12-year-old prodigy takes on Elon Musk in clean energy bet," and "Kid's bold challenge to Musk. Can he really do it?" were plastered all over the internet. Ethan scrolled through the comments, some praising him for his courage, others mocking him for being too young. But there was one message that caught his eye, It was from a person who worked at a tech company that specialized in AI. "Hey, Ethan," the message read. "I saw your challenge to Musk. I'm an engineer at TechNext Innovations. If you need help with your project, I'd be happy to offer some advice on the AI side of things. We believe in young talent." Ethan felt a surge of excitement. This was it. This was the kind of support he needed. Do you think Ethan can really pull off this challenge? If you were in his shoes, what's the first step you would take to solve the energy crisis? Let me know your thoughts below. The next few days were a blur of excitement, confusion, and determination. Ethan had no time to waste. He knew that time was his biggest enemy in this challenge, and with Elon Musk watching, he couldn't afford to stumble. The pressure weighed heavily on his young shoulders, but he pushed it aside. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages, emails, and notifications from people all over the world. Some were encouraging. Others were skeptical. But one message stood out above the rest. It was from the AI engineer at TechNext Innovations, offering help. Ethan quickly typed a response, setting up a virtual meeting for the following evening. This was his chance to connect with a real professional, someone who could provide him with valuable insights and resources. But Ethan knew he couldn't do it alone. If he was going to take on Musk, he needed to build a team. He thought about the people who could help him, and his mind immediately turned to his schoolmates. They weren't scientists or engineers, but they were sharp, creative, and driven in their own ways. He reached out to his closest friends, Zoe, an ace coder, Malik, who had a knack for designing things out of almost nothing, and Emma, who loved all things related to renewable energy. Ethan knew that they might not have experience in clean energy specifically, but they had the passion and the skills to get it done. Together, they could build something incredible. The next day, Ethan gathered them all at his house after school. Malik arrived first, his usual backpack stuffed with gadgets and tools. He was already sketching out ideas for a new kind of solar panel that could absorb more sunlight and convert it into energy more efficiently. "You know, if we could tweak the way solar cells work, we might be able to make them cheaper and more effective," Malik said, barely looking up from his notebook. "But we'll need some serious tech for that." Zoe, always the most tech-savvy of the group, was next to show up. She had a laptop under her arm, and her eyes were wide with excitement as she slid into the seat next to Ethan. "Okay, kid, you've really gone and done it now. I saw the challenge you gave Musk. You know I'm in. Let's start with AI, right?" Ethan grinned. "Exactly. I need your help to create an AI system that can predict energy consumption and optimize the supply of renewable energy sources. It's going to need a lot of processing power." Emma walked in a few minutes later, carrying a binder filled with notes on renewable energy systems. She had spent the past few years researching ways to make energy more sustainable and affordable, a passion she had inherited from her father, who was an environmental scientist. "I've got a few ideas on how we can use wind and solar energy more effectively," Emma said, her voice full of determination. "But we need something that can pull it all together. It has to be scalable and efficient." Ethan nodded. "That's exactly what I was thinking. We need to create a system that uses both AI and renewable energy in tandem. We'll use AI to manage the energy grid and optimize energy storage. The goal is to create a smart system that learns from the energy demand and can adapt in real time." Malik looked impressed. "I can work on the hardware side, then. If we're going to make this work, I'll need to design custom hardware for the energy system, like high-efficiency solar cells or even a portable battery pack." Zoe leaned over her laptop, already typing at lightning speed. "I'm going to start working on the software. I'll program the AI to optimize energy usage and ensure that we can predict energy demand accurately." Emma flipped through her binder, looking for relevant papers. "I'll focus on the renewable energy systems. We can't just rely on one source. It needs to be a hybrid system, pulling from solar, wind, and possibly even tidal energy. I'll figure out how to make them work together." Ethan felt a surge of hope. He had the team. He had the resources. Now, all he needed was to execute. The next few months would be a blur of late nights and coding marathons, but they were all in it together. Over the next few weeks, the team worked tirelessly. Zoe's AI algorithms began to take shape, and Malik's prototypes for the solar panels started showing real promise. Emma worked with a local energy company to get access to wind turbine data. while Ethan continued refining the overall vision for their energy system. But despite the progress, Ethan knew the clock was ticking. Every day felt like a race against time, and every breakthrough felt like a small victory. Yet, there was still so much to do. Then, the phone call came. It was late on a Friday evening when Ethan received a message from the AI engineer at TechNext Innovations. The message was short and direct. Ready to meet? I have some ideas that could really accelerate your project. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment. The meeting with the AI expert could be the key to unlocking the next level of their system. The next morning, Ethan and Zoe hopped onto a video call with the engineer, who introduced himself as Alex Carter. He was a calm, methodical person with years of experience in AI systems for energy management. Alex immediately saw the potential in their project. Your vision is impressive, Alex said after a few minutes of discussion. But if you're serious about creating a system that can manage real-time energy flow, you'll need a more robust infrastructure. I can help you integrate the data you're using into a real-time predictive system. I can also provide you with some powerful machine learning tools to make your system smarter. Ethan's eyes lit up. This was the breakthrough they needed. We'll need to get you access to cloud computing, Alex continued. It's going to take massive processing power, but with the right infrastructure, you'll be able to scale quickly. Ethan turned to Zoe, who was already furiously taking notes. We're going to need to make some upgrades to our systems, but with this kind of help, we can really take it to the next level. As the meeting ended, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had the tech. They had the team. Now, all they needed was the final piece of the puzzle, a working prototype. Do you think Ethan's team can pull off this incredible project? If you were part of his team, what part would you contribute to? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The countdown had begun. With only a few weeks left until the final showdown with Elon Musk, Ethan and his team were on the verge of testing the first prototype of their energy system. The pressure was mounting, but so was their excitement. Each day felt like a race against time, and every breakthrough brought them one step closer to their goal. The team had decided to test the system in a local abandoned warehouse, far away from prying eyes. It was a massive, empty space, perfect for setting up their makeshift lab. Ethan had managed to secure some equipment from local donors, including solar panels, wind turbines, and a few high-end computers to run the AI software. Malik, with his knack for design, had built a custom energy storage unit that could handle the electricity generated by the renewable sources. Zoe's AI code was integrated into the system, ready to optimize energy storage and distribution. I've double-checked everything, Malik said, tapping his fingers on the solar panels he'd set up. These panels should absorb enough energy to power the whole warehouse. If everything works, we should see a significant drop in energy waste. Zoe, sitting at a nearby laptop, was focused on fine-tuning the AI system. The algorithms are ready to go. The AI will learn the energy demand patterns as we test it, and from there, it will optimize the distribution based on the most efficient routes. We should have a real-time feedback loop. Emma, who had been coordinating with local energy experts, stood next to the wind turbine setup. I've linked the wind turbine data to the system. If all goes well, the AI will be able to balance the energy input from the wind and solar in real time. Ethan stood in the center of the warehouse, looking at the team. All right, team, we've got one shot at this. Let's make sure everything's ready before we power it up. They had rehearsed the setup countless times, but there was always that nagging fear that something could go wrong. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that, no matter how much preparation they did, they were about to take a leap into the unknown. With a deep breath, Ethan nodded at Zoe, who pressed a button on the laptop. The screens flickered to life, showing graphs, real-time energy consumption data, and energy distribution predictions. The AI had started analyzing the incoming data from the solar panels and the wind turbines. Data's coming in, Zoe said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. It's adjusting the grid distribution based on demand and supply. Malik watched the meters carefully as the solar panels started absorbing sunlight. If this works, we'll be able to predict the energy flow accurately and reduce waste significantly. Everything seemed to be working, until it wasn't. The first sign of trouble came when the wind turbine suddenly started spinning too fast. Wait, Emma shouted. The wind's picking up, but the system isn't adjusting quickly enough. Zoe's eyes widened as she looked at the feedback from the AI system. The AI is trying to adjust, but it's not predicting fast enough. The turbine's overloading the battery. Panic set in as the wind turbine's excess power threatened to fry their battery storage. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't part of the plan. They had accounted for the wind's unpredictability, but this was a curveball. Shut it down, Ethan yelled. Zoe typed furiously, trying to shut down the turbine from her laptop, but the AI was still learning and hadn't yet reached the point where it could respond in real time. Malik rushed over to the control panel. We can't let it overcharge the battery. I'll manually disconnect it. With a loud clunk, Malik yanked the power switch on the turbine. The warehouse went silent, save for the hum of the computers and the low buzz of the remaining solar panels. They all stood there for a moment, catching their breath. The system had failed, but at least it hadn't resulted in a catastrophic meltdown. Emma wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. I thought we had accounted for the load balancing. This isn't good. Ethan, though shaken, kept his focus. We can fix this. We just need more time. We know the AI can do this, but it's still learning. Zoe nodded. Right. The algorithm needs more training data. It's not adjusting to extreme conditions like this yet. We have to fine-tune it, Malik added. Maybe add more sensors to monitor the wind speed in real time. If we can predict sudden gusts, we can adjust the system faster. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, pacing. This isn't a failure. It's just a setback. We knew this wouldn't be easy. But if we're going to take on Musk, we can't afford any more mistakes. The team got to work. They spent the next several hours tweaking the AI, adding more data points, and calibrating the turbines and solar panels. By the end of the day, they had made a significant improvement to the system. The AI was now able to process wind speeds and solar energy more efficiently, and the energy storage unit was adjusted to handle a wider range of inputs. As they ran the system one last time, they all watched the monitors closely. This time, when the wind picked up again, the AI responded immediately, adjusting the energy flow and stabilizing the grid without overloading the system. Looks like we've got it, Zoe said, her voice tinged with relief. It's working. The system's learning from the data and adjusting in real time. We can handle all kinds of energy sources now. Malik let out a cheer. We did it. We're finally on the right track. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. They had overcome the first real challenge of their project, but he knew this was just the beginning. There would be more obstacles ahead, more tests, more fine-tuning, and a looming deadline. But they were one step closer to their goal, and that made the battle worth it. What do you think of Ethan and his team's progress so far? Do you think they'll be able to fine-tune their system in time for the showdown with Musk? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The days were slipping away faster than Ethan had imagined. The final deadline for the challenge, a public demonstration of their prototype, was only a week away. The team was running on fumes, working day and night, refining their system and preparing for the most important moment of their lives. Elon Musk's challenge was no longer just a far-off goal. It had become their reality. The warehouse had transformed into their command center, a buzzing hive of activity where wires and screens were everywhere. Ethan, Malik, Zoe, and Emma had become a well-oiled machine, each person taking on their part with determination. Despite their success with the energy flow adjustment, there was still one problem they hadn't solved: scalability. Their system worked perfectly in the warehouse, but would it be able to handle a larger-scale environment? Could it power an entire city, as Musk had suggested in the challenge? We need to simulate a bigger grid, Ethan said, sitting at the center of the room surrounded by monitors. If we're going to impress Musk, we need to prove that this isn't just a prototype. It has to scale. Zoe was already pulling up data on the laptop, calculating potential scenarios. We need more nodes. Right now, we're just running off one source of energy. But we need to model a grid where solar, wind, and even hydropower are integrated. I can tweak the AI to handle that, but it's going to take some time. Emma nodded in agreement. And we need a real-time feedback system that can adjust energy flow based on citywide consumption patterns. That means more data, more sensors, and better algorithms. Malik was pacing back and forth, a bit on edge. We have the components, but do we have enough time? We might need to create new hardware to handle all the extra power storage. Ethan was quiet for a moment, the weight of the challenge sinking in. We've come this far, and we've made incredible progress. We can do this. We just need to focus and get to work. That night, the team worked until the early hours, testing and debugging the software, improving the sensors, and connecting new energy sources to the system. Malik and Emma were huddled over their custom designs, creating additional energy storage units, while Zoe continued refining the AI, adding new layers of complexity to handle the massive grid. As dawn approached, Ethan stood on the rooftop of the warehouse, gazing out at the city skyline. It was hard to believe that in just a few days, he would face Elon Musk himself. The challenge had grown from an audacious idea into a full-fledged project, one that could change the way the world viewed renewable energy. But there was still so much to do. The day of the test run arrived, and the team was ready to see if their work would hold up under pressure. Ethan had arranged for a small-scale simulation of the city's energy grid. It wasn't a real city, but it was close enough. A nearby industrial park with multiple buildings and energy needs that they could test their system against. Malik had set up the energy storage units, which were connected to a combination of solar panels and wind turbines spread across the area. Zoe's AI was now running on an enhanced system, designed to handle the larger scale, and Emma had provided the data on consumption patterns from nearby buildings. As the team stood together, the moment of truth arrived. "Let's see if this works," Ethan muttered to himself. Zoe hit a key on the keyboard, and the AI sprang to life, analyzing the energy usage across the industrial park. The AI began adjusting the power flow, directing energy from the solar panels and wind turbines to buildings that needed it the most. The grid shifted and adapted in real time, just as they had hoped. "Everything seems stable," Zoe said, eyes glued to the screen. "The AI is predicting the demand and optimizing the supply in real time." Malik was watching the energy storage unit readings. "We're charging and discharging at the right rates. The system's stable, no spikes." But then, as if in answer to their hopes, the unthinkable happened. One of the turbines malfunctioned. A gust of wind had caused it to spin wildly, pushing the system into overdrive. The battery storage unit started to show signs of overheating. "No, no, no," Malik shouted, scrambling to override the system. "It's overloading. The battery's going to fry." The system's alarms blared, and Ethan's heart raced. This was exactly what they feared. A potential failure at the most crucial moment. Zoe's fingers flew over the keyboard. "I'm recalibrating the AI. It'll adjust. Give it a second." Ethan's mind was spinning. "We've worked so hard. This can't be how it ends." The team watched as the AI worked frantically to compensate for the sudden overload. The turbine's energy input was rerouted, and the battery was slowly brought back under control. But the damage had been done. The system had failed. The warehouse was eerily quiet after the test. The team stood around the screens, watching as the data reset itself, hoping for a miracle. Their hopes had been dashed. The AI hadn't adjusted quickly enough. The battery had been damaged, and now they were back at square one. Ethan collapsed into a chair, his hands on his face. "We were so close." Zoe, who had been furiously typing away at the laptop, looked up. "Hold on. I think I found something." She pointed to a part of the algorithm. "It's the wind turbine's response time. The system couldn't adjust fast enough to the input spike." Emma looked at the data and nodded. "We need to fine-tune the turbine's sensor input. If we can make it more sensitive to wind gusts and have the AI adjust more rapidly, it could work." Malik slammed his hand on the table. "It's not over yet. We can fix this, but we need to stay focused. We're not quitting now." Ethan felt a surge of determination. "We can't afford to quit. Musk isn't going to wait for us to fix this. We need to learn from this failure and keep pushing forward." The team rallied together, determined not to let this setback define them. They worked late into the night, fixing the turbine sensors and tweaking the AI to handle sudden fluctuations in energy supply. The pressure was immense, but they knew they couldn't give up now. As the sun began to rise the next day, the team looked at each other. "We've got one last shot at this," Ethan said, a determined glint in his eye. "Let's make it count." Do you think Ethan and his team can recover from this failure? What would you do if you were in their shoes? Share your thoughts and strategies in the comments below. The clock was ticking. There were just 3 days left until the showdown with Elon Musk. The team had barely slept since the malfunction during their last test run. Every ounce of energy they had left was being poured into perfecting the system. Failure was no longer an option. It was now or never. Ethan sat at the center of their makeshift command center, staring at the monitors with a mix of anxiety and hope. Zoe, Malik, and Emma were all working in sync, their movements quicker and more deliberate than ever. They were determined to overcome the challenges and prove that their system could work at scale, even if it meant pushing the technology to its limits. All right, we've made the adjustments to the turbine sensors and tweaked the AI's response time, Zoe said, her voice steady but tinged with the weight of exhaustion. The AI should now be able to predict sudden energy spikes and handle them in real time. Malik looked over at the battery storage unit, making final adjustments to ensure it wouldn't overheat. I've recalibrated the charging and discharging protocols. The turbines should now stay within safe operational limits. Emma stood in front of the system's power grid layout, reviewing the energy distribution map for the final test. I've set up a new, larger simulation model, similar to the industrial park we used before. If this works, we'll be ready to scale up to city-level integration. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. We've got this, he said, though the words felt heavier than they usually did. If we pull this off, we're not just changing the future of energy. We're going to prove that we can outsmart the very people who said we couldn't do it. Zoe nodded. Let's do this. The team drove to the location of the final simulation, a larger, more complex energy grid set up by a group of local engineers who had agreed to help them test the system under real-world conditions. This wasn't just an energy plant. It was a combination of solar panels, wind turbines, and even hydroelectric power, a multi-source grid that mimicked what a city might use. The pressure was immense. The whole team had gathered at the site, watching anxiously as they began to connect their system to the grid. All systems are go, Malik said, glancing at his tablet, which was monitoring the overall status of the grid. The system is taking in power from all sources. Zoe's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her eyes glued to the data coming in. The AI is processing everything and redistributing power based on demand. It's holding steady so far. Emma watched the battery storage units with a mixture of focus and concern. This is it. The battery should be able to handle fluctuations now without overcharging. Ethan watched the data unfold in real time. His pulse quickened as the simulation began to heat up. The grid started to experience a spike in energy demand, just as it would during a heat wave, when every building in the area turns on air conditioning and the demand for power skyrockets. Here comes the test, Ethan said, gripping the edge of the table. The AI kicked into action. It began adjusting the energy flow, redirecting power from the wind turbines to the solar panels, which were underperforming due to a sudden cloud cover. The batteries started charging at a higher rate, but the system was handling the load smoothly. No signs of overload. But then the wind picked up, faster than anyone expected. The turbines spinning out of control. Malik shouted, "It's pulling too much energy." Zoe, Ethan called out, "Is the AI adjusting?" Zoe's fingers were moving rapidly across the keyboard, her face intense. The AI is compensating. It's recalibrating the turbines and adjusting the battery storage. But the wind speed increased even more rapidly, and the turbine began to produce more energy than the system could store. A surge of panic surged in Ethan's chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. Was this how it was going to end? But then, a miracle happened. The AI detected the overload before it could cause damage. The feedback loop recalibrated the turbine's input and sent excess energy to the backup grid, a secondary system they had set up for just this kind of emergency. The battery storage unit, which had been approaching dangerous levels, was now able to handle the extra energy without overheating. "Yes," Zoe shouted, jumping to her feet. "It worked." The AI adjusted in real time. "The system is stable." Malik let out a deep breath, his hands trembling. "We did it. We really did it." Emma smiled, relief flooding her face. "The grid is perfectly balanced. The power is being distributed as needed." Ethan stood there for a moment, letting the reality of what they had just accomplished sink in. They had done it. They had created a system that not only worked but could scale, balance energy demand, and handle extreme fluctuations in real time. They had outsmarted the obstacles that had once seemed insurmountable. The following morning, Ethan received an email. The subject line simply read, "It's time." The challenge with Elon Musk was about to begin. Ethan took a deep breath. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. His team had worked tirelessly, and now it was time to show the world and Musk that their system was not just an idea, but a reality. At the Musk-owned compound, an enormous stadium had been set up for the event. Rows of cameras, reporters, and even energy experts filled the stands, ready for what was expected to be a high-stakes showdown. Elon Musk stood on stage, grinning confidently, as Ethan and his team set up their equipment on the opposite side. The air was thick with anticipation. This was the moment that could change everything. If Ethan's team succeeded, they wouldn't just win the challenge. They would prove that even the youngest innovators could challenge the status quo. Ethan stepped up to the podium, his heart pounding in his chest. "We are ready," he said, looking out over the crowd. "Today, we show you a new way forward, a future where renewable energy isn't just a dream, but a reality for everyone." Do you think Ethan and his team can win the challenge? Will they outsmart Elon Musk? Share your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. The massive stadium was filled with energy, both literally and figuratively. Ethan stood on the stage, his heart racing, looking out at the sea of faces, reporters, energy experts, and the biggest names in technology. But it was one person who mattered more than the rest. Elon Musk, standing at the other end of the stage, hands casually tucked in his pockets, his expression unreadable. Ethan's team was backstage, ready to present their groundbreaking energy system. They had worked tirelessly for months, building a system that not only met Musk's challenge, but had the potential to revolutionize the way the world used energy. And now, here they were, about to face the ultimate test. Musk's challenge had been clear: develop a sustainable energy solution capable of powering an entire city, efficiently balancing solar, wind, and battery storage. The system had to be flexible, scalable, and capable of managing energy demands in real time. And the system had to work seamlessly, without failure. As the countdown began, Ethan couldn't help but glance at his team. Zoe, Malik, and Emma all gave him encouraging nods. They knew what was at stake, but they also knew that they had put everything they had into this. They weren't just participating in the challenge. They were going to change the world. The loudspeaker crackled. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final showdown in the Renewable Energy Challenge. Today, we will witness the future of energy technology as two teams present their groundbreaking systems. On the left, we have Elon Musk's team, and on the right, the team led by 16-year-old Ethan Collins. Let's see who can deliver the best solution for the world's energy crisis." Ethan's breath caught in his throat as the spotlight swung to him. This was it. Ethan stepped forward, adjusting the microphone, his voice amplified by the speakers. "Good afternoon, everyone. We are here to show you that the future of energy doesn't have to be a distant dream. With the technology we've developed, we can make energy more sustainable, more efficient, and more accessible for everyone, everywhere." He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Our system integrates solar, wind, and hydropower to provide a balanced energy grid. The AI we've developed adjusts real-time power flows, making sure that energy demand is met efficiently without the need for excessive storage or waste. And with the new turbine technology and advanced battery management, we've overcome many of the limitations that existing systems face." The crowd was silent, listening intently as Ethan explained the intricacies of their system. He could see the journalists taking notes, the engineers watching closely, and even Musk himself, his face stoic but his eyes sharp. Ethan continued, detailing the improvements they had made since their initial failure during testing. They had enhanced the AI's ability to predict power spikes, recalibrated the turbine sensors for better response, and developed a more sophisticated backup grid to handle extreme conditions. As Ethan spoke, he pointed to the giant screen behind him, which displayed live data from the simulated energy grid they had set up. The AI was processing the data, adjusting the power output from solar panels, wind turbines, and battery storage in real time. The numbers on the screen were stable, the system's response seamless. Zoe, Malik, and Emma were watching anxiously from the sidelines, ready to jump in if anything went wrong. But so far, everything seemed to be working perfectly. Now it was time for Elon Musk to present. He strode confidently to the stage, a slight smile on his face as the audience cheered. Unlike Ethan, Musk wasn't a newcomer to the world of renewable energy. He was already known for his ventures with solar energy and electric cars. His team had been working for months to develop a solution, and he was ready to demonstrate it. "Thank you, Ethan," Musk said, his voice booming across the stadium. "Now, let me show you a system that will not only power cities, but will change how we think about energy distribution forever." Musk's team unveiled their system, a massive grid network of solar panels, wind turbines, and energy storage units. The setup looked impressive, with sleek designs and cutting-edge tech. Musk's team began their demonstration, showcasing the ability to balance energy loads between different power sources. But as the demonstration continued, it became clear that there were problems. The turbines weren't adjusting quickly enough to the wind speed, causing fluctuations in the energy flow. The backup grid kicked in, but it wasn't able to handle the load in real time. The solar panels had a delay in adjusting to sudden cloud cover, and the battery storage was unable to prevent power surges without tripping its safety limits. Musk's team scrambled to fix the issues as the system faltered in real time. The crowd shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the confidence in Musk's system beginning to waver. Ethan watched closely, his heart pounding. This was the moment that could determine everything. As Musk's team worked to resolve the issues, the crowd's attention shifted back to Ethan's team. Ethan took a deep breath, turning back to the microphone. "We've made sure that our system is built to handle unexpected spikes and drops in energy demand. And unlike existing systems, which rely heavily on oversized storage or excessive energy waste, our system optimizes the use of energy sources in real time, ensuring that every watt counts." He hit a button, and the screen behind him switched to a real-time simulation of a city grid, just like the one they had tested in the industrial park. The AI adjusted power flows seamlessly, handling multiple energy sources and balancing the demand in real time without missing a beat. For a moment, the entire stadium was silent. The system held steady, even as the simulated demand spiked due to unexpected weather conditions. The backup grid wasn't needed, and the turbines remained within optimal operational limits. The system was running like a well-oiled machine. Zoe, Malik, and Emma exchanged looks of quiet relief. But Ethan didn't allow himself to relax. This wasn't over yet. Musk, now visibly frustrated, glanced at his team. They had fixed the issues, but the cracks in their system were now evident. He turned toward Ethan and gave a small nod. "Well done, Ethan," he said, his tone begrudgingly respectful. "Your system has potential." The crowd erupted into applause. Ethan felt a surge of pride, but he knew they weren't finished yet. The challenge wasn't about winning. It was about proving that innovation could come from anyone, regardless of age or background. As the event came to a close, Elon Musk stepped forward. "I've seen a lot of impressive things in my career, but what Ethan and his team have done here is remarkable. They've proven that even the youngest minds can come up with solutions that push the boundaries of what we thought was possible." Ethan smiled, the weight of the moment sinking in. "Thank you, Mr. Musk. We're just getting started." The crowd cheered once again, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond just winning a competition. It was about changing the world. Do you think Ethan and his team's system could truly change the future of energy? What do you think about Elon Musk's response? Share your thoughts below. The world had taken notice. After the dramatic showdown with Elon Musk, Ethan and his team were thrust into the spotlight. Media outlets, energy experts, and even major investors were all eager to learn more about the system they had developed. What had started as a local project was now a global conversation, and Ethan felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. But it wasn't just about the attention anymore. Ethan and his team had created something that could change the way the world used energy. And now, they had to figure out how to turn their success into a real, sustainable solution that could be implemented on a global scale. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Ethan's inbox was flooded with emails from venture capitalists, energy companies, and environmental organizations. They all wanted to partner with him. They all wanted to be part of the revolution. And yet, with each offer, Ethan felt a growing sense of unease. "I don't know," he said one evening, sitting in front of his laptop. "It feels like everyone's just trying to use us to get ahead. We're just kids." How can we possibly navigate this? Zoe, Malik, and Emma were gathered in the small meeting room they had rented. They just finished reviewing a pitch from one of the larger energy conglomerates. The terms were good, too good, perhaps. The company was offering a generous investment, but in return, they would have full control over the system's implementation and commercialization. It's a tough situation, Zoe said, scrolling through her tablet. These companies can offer us the resources we need to take this to the next level, but we risk losing control of the technology we've built. Malik leaned forward, eyes fixed on the contract. If we accept this, we might lose the essence of what we're trying to do. We could be just another cog in their corporate machine, and the technology could end up being used for profit over people. Emma nodded, her expression thoughtful. But if we don't accept, we might not have the funds or infrastructure to scale the system. We've been lucky so far, but the reality is that we need serious backing to make this happen. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to weigh their options. I don't want to lose sight of what we're doing. We've always said this is about the future of energy, not just about making money. Then we need to find a way to stay true to that vision, Zoe said. We need to figure out how to scale up without selling out. After much deliberation, the team decided to take a bold step. Instead of accepting the big offers from corporate giants, they would launch their own independent startup. The plan was to seek out ethical investors who shared their vision for sustainable energy. They would retain full control over the technology, ensuring that it would always be used for the betterment of the planet, not just for profit. Ethan knew this wouldn't be easy. Starting a company from scratch was a monumental task, even with the media attention they had received. They would need a solid business plan, investors who believed in their mission, and a dedicated team to help them scale the system. It wasn't just about the technology anymore. It was about building a company that could stand the test of time. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, Ethan said, looking at the team, but I know we can do it. We've already done the impossible. We just have to keep pushing. As they began to build the foundation for their startup, they faced their first major challenge, securing investors who aligned with their vision. While some were eager to get involved, there were also many who saw their technology as just another product to be sold to the highest bidder. One of the most promising meetings took place with a group of investors who were passionate about renewable energy and sustainability. They understood that the system could be a game changer, but they also wanted to ensure it would be profitable. The balance between making a meaningful impact and maintaining financial viability was difficult to navigate. How can we be sure that your system will work on a large scale? One of the investors asked, leaning forward. We've seen many technologies with great potential, but most fail when they're implemented in real-world conditions. Ethan took a deep breath. We've already proven it works in a controlled environment. We've tested it on multiple grids, and we've even scaled up to simulate city-level energy distribution. But I understand the concern. We're not just looking for a quick win. We're building something that will last for generations. That means we have to be meticulous. We have to plan for every contingency, and we have to be willing to learn and adapt as we grow. The investor nodded thoughtfully. All right, but you'll need more than just your technology. You'll need a team of experts, a clear roadmap, and the ability to handle logistics on a large scale. Are you prepared for that? We are, Malik said, speaking for the first time. We've already assembled a team of engineers and experts who are helping us refine the technology. And we're building partnerships with local communities to ensure that our system can be implemented in ways that truly benefit people. The meeting ended on a positive note, with the investors expressing interest in continuing the conversation. But Ethan knew this was just the beginning. They had a long road ahead of them, filled with challenges, obstacles, and tough decisions. But for the first time since the showdown with Musk, he felt a sense of clarity. They were on the right path. Months passed, and as the team worked tirelessly to refine their system, they began to see the first signs of success. They secured initial funding from impact-driven investors who shared their passion for sustainability. They started small pilot programs in several communities, testing the system in real-world conditions. And slowly but surely, the world started to take notice. We're not just changing the way the world uses energy, Ethan said during an interview with a major news outlet. We're showing people that the future of energy doesn't have to be controlled by a few giant corporations. We're empowering local communities, reducing waste, and creating a system that can work for everyone. As they prepared to launch their first full-scale project in a medium-sized city, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of pride. They had come so far, and yet this was just the beginning. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, he truly believed that they could change the world. What do you think about Ethan's decision to stay independent and launch his own startup? Do you think they're on the right path? Share your thoughts and ideas below. The morning sun broke through the clouds as Ethan stood in front of the new headquarters for his energy startup. It was a modest building, but to him, it represented everything they had worked for. Their team had grown from a handful of dedicated individuals to a small, tight-knit company with engineers, environmental experts, and business strategists. But as exciting as it was, the reality of scaling their technology to a global level was beginning to sink in. The system they had developed was already working well in pilot programs, but now they faced the monumental task of making it scalable. Could their technology really work in cities of different sizes, with varying energy needs? Could they handle the complexities of building infrastructure, negotiating with governments, and navigating the global energy market? Ethan took a deep breath and entered the office. His team was already gathered around the conference table, going over their latest project, implementing their system in a large city in the Midwest. They had already run simulations, but this was the first real-world test of how their energy solution would perform on a citywide scale. Malik was the first to speak. All right, we've done our simulations, and we're confident in the technology. But we're still going to face some serious obstacles with the infrastructure. The existing grid wasn't built to handle a system like ours. We're going to have to work closely with the city's utilities to make sure everything integrates smoothly. Zoe nodded in agreement. And then there's the political side of things. We've already had a few meetings with local government officials, and they're interested, but there's a lot of red tape to cut through. The city's leadership has to be on board, and they need to be convinced that this is a solution they can trust. Ethan's mind raced. The technological side was daunting enough, but the social and political hurdles were even more complex. We need to make sure we can prove to them that our system is both sustainable and reliable. If we can show them that it works, and works better than the current grid, we'll have a shot. Emma, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. I've been looking into the logistics, and I think we can reduce installation costs by localizing some of the production. If we can build partnerships with manufacturers in the region, we'll lower the cost of scaling up and create jobs in the local economy. That could be a huge selling point. Ethan smiled at her idea. It was a smart move, and it showed their commitment to not only changing the energy landscape, but also contributing to the local economy. Let's start working on that. Malik, I need you to coordinate with the local utilities. Zoe, I need you to dig deeper into the political side of things. Emma, let's work on those partnerships. We've got a lot to do, but I believe in this team. 2 weeks later, they hit their first major roadblock. The city's leadership had agreed to the pilot program, but as the team started preparing the infrastructure, they encountered a series of unexpected technical issues. The AI that managed the energy distribution was working well in simulations, but in the real world, it was struggling to adapt to the nuances of the local grid. Energy fluctuations were more unpredictable than they had anticipated, and the system wasn't adjusting quickly enough to prevent power surges or blackouts. Something's not right, Malik said, staring at his computer screen. The AI should be recalibrating to these changes, but it's not responding as it should. We need to figure out what's going wrong before we launch this on a larger scale. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. They had tested the system exhaustively in smaller-scale environments, but they hadn't anticipated the complexity of working with a real-world grid. The AI had been designed to learn and adapt, but perhaps the problem was that it wasn't learning quickly enough. We've got to fix this, Ethan said, pacing. If we don't get this right, the whole system will fail. And if we fail here, it's not just this city that we lose. It's the entire future of this project. The pressure was building, and the weight of their ambitions was starting to feel heavier than ever. As the team worked around the clock to troubleshoot, Emma came up with an idea that might just be the key to solving the problem. What if we adjusted the AI's learning parameters? Right now, it's learning from the grid's data, but it's not fully taking into account the external variables, things like weather patterns, sudden shifts in demand, and even human behavior. If we tweak the model to factor in those real-world uncertainties, it might be able to adapt more quickly. It was a risky move, Adjusting the learning parameters could have unintended consequences, and there was no guarantee it would solve the issue. But it was their best shot. After several tense days of coding and testing, the team rolled out the updated AI model. They connected it to the grid once more, holding their breath as they watched the results. This time, the system responded. The AI quickly adapted to the fluctuations in energy demand, predicting power surges before they happened. It balanced the load across solar, wind, and battery storage, and the grid stayed stable, even during peak usage hours. Malik's face lit up as the system stabilized. It worked. The AI is handling it perfectly. Ethan felt a surge of relief. Great work, team. We've got this. With the technical side of things finally in place, it was time to turn their attention to the political side. Zoe had been in constant contact with the city's leaders, trying to convince them that the project was worth the risk. They had already faced resistance from local power companies who were hesitant to relinquish control, and now they needed to get the approval to expand the system citywide. We need a clear, persuasive pitch, Zoe said, looking over the latest draft of their proposal. We've got the data, but we also need to emphasize the environmental and economic benefits. If we can show them that this project will not only make their city more sustainable, but also create jobs and attract investments, we'll have a much better chance of getting their full backing. Ethan sat down, reading through the proposal. It was clear, concise, and addressed every concern. But there was still one big question. Would the city's leaders be willing to take the leap and be the first to implement a system that challenged the status quo? That evening, they received an answer. The city council had voted in favor of expanding the project, approving the system for a citywide implementation. It was a huge victory. With the success of their first large-scale project, Ethan and his team began to think bigger. They started planning their next steps, how to take their system beyond one city and into multiple regions, countries, and ultimately, around the world. They knew that there were still many hurdles ahead. Technical challenges, logistical nightmares, and, of course, the looming pressure of competitors trying to replicate their work. But Ethan had a vision. He had always believed that the future of energy could be decentralized, sustainable, and accessible to everyone. And now, with their first major success behind them, it felt like that future was finally within reach. What do you think about Ethan and his team's approach to overcoming both technical and political challenges? Do you believe their system will succeed on a global scale? Share your thoughts below. After months of painstaking work, Ethan and his team had successfully expanded their energy system across the city, gaining the trust and support of local leaders and businesses. The project had been a resounding success, and it was now time for the next big leap, taking their technology to the international stage. But that's when the real challenges began. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at a map of the world pinned to the wall. The lines representing the regions they were targeting, Europe, Asia, and South America, seemed to blur together as he traced them with his finger. Each line represented not just an opportunity, but a significant hurdle. Different countries had different regulations, political landscapes, and energy needs. There was no one-size-fits-all solution. "All right, team," Ethan said, gathering everyone in the conference room. "We've proven that this system works on a small scale, and we've made a good name for ourselves in the US. Now it's time to look beyond borders. But we have to be smart. One wrong move, and it could set us back years." Zoe, always the realist, spoke first. "The international market is far more complex than anything we've dealt with. Each country has its own policies, environmental standards, and energy regulations. We'll need to localize our approach for every market." "I agree," Malik added, flipping through his notes. "We also have to consider the cultural aspects. Not every country will welcome an American startup coming in and telling them how to fix their energy problems. We need to form partnerships with local entities if we're going to be taken seriously." Emma was less concerned with the politics and more focused on the technical side. "What I'm worried about is scaling the technology to meet the demands of entire countries. The system is robust, but what happens when we roll it out in a major urban center with millions of people? We're going to need to double or triple our infrastructure capacity, and that's going to require some serious planning." Ethan nodded, deep in thought. "We've already proven the technology can scale up in a single city. Now, we need to prove it can scale globally. We'll need to start with pilot projects in specific regions, and I'll need you all to dig deep into local markets to figure out the best strategy. Just as they began strategizing their international expansion, Ethan received an unexpected call. It was from one of their early investors, a quiet backer who had remained in the shadows until now. "Ethan, I think you should know something," the voice on the other end of the line said. "There's a company in China that's working on a similar technology, and I hear they've been making significant strides. They've already started negotiating with several countries in Southeast Asia. If they beat you to market there, it could hurt your global plans." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. A competitor, and from China, no less. Their technology had been groundbreaking, but could they really hold off a global competitor who had the resources of a massive state-backed corporation behind them? "We'll need to move fast," Ethan said, his mind racing. "But we can't just rush into things. We need a solid strategy." The team's first target for international expansion was Europe. Their first partnership was with a mid-sized city in Germany, which had long been a leader in renewable energy. The challenge wasn't just technical. They had to convince the government that their solution would work alongside the existing infrastructure without disrupting the already established systems. Zoe had spent weeks preparing for the first round of meetings with German officials, and the day had finally arrived. The room was full of energy experts, engineers, and policymakers who would determine the fate of their project in Europe. Ethan, Malik, and Emma joined Zoe at the table, all eyes on them as the presentation began. "Germany is already a leader in renewable energy," one official said, his tone skeptical. "We've got solar, wind, and a well-established energy grid. Why do we need an American company to come in and tell us how to manage our energy needs? What can you offer that we don't already have?" Ethan had anticipated this question. "What we offer isn't just another piece of the puzzle," he began, standing confidently. "It's a solution that works across systems. Our technology is adaptive, decentralized, and sustainable. You don't have to abandon your current infrastructure to implement it. We work with what you already have, and we make it better." The team ran through a series of data points, showing how their system would improve energy efficiency, reduce waste, and even help reduce carbon emissions. But the breakthrough came when Emma introduced a new feature they had developed, an AI-powered real-time energy forecasting tool that would allow cities to predict energy needs down to the hour and optimize consumption. "We've built a system that learns and adapts to any environment," she explained. "This tool will enable cities to manage their energy use more efficiently, saving millions in operational costs." The room fell silent for a moment. Then the lead official spoke up. "It's impressive, but we're still hesitant. You're an untested technology from an unknown startup. We need proof." Zoe leaned forward, her voice calm but persuasive. "We understand your hesitation, and that's why we're proposing a small-scale pilot project. Let us prove to you that this will work." After a tense silence, the official nodded. "All right, you've got your pilot." As the team moved forward with the pilot project in Germany, they also faced mounting pressure from their competitors. The Chinese company they had been warned about had started to make its moves in Asia, signing agreements with several Southeast Asian countries. They were quick, aggressive, and backed by the resources of one of the world's largest economies. "We need to move fast in Asia," Malik said during a team meeting. "If we don't secure our position there soon, we risk losing everything." But Ethan wasn't about to let fear drive their decisions. "We've built something special, something that's not just about getting to market first. It's about creating a sustainable future. That's what sets us apart from them." Emma agreed. "Our technology is scalable and customizable in a way that theirs isn't. If we stick to our values and keep our focus, we can win in the long run." Ethan nodded. "We've got to stay focused. Let's make sure that we make the right moves, and not just the fast ones." What do you think about Ethan's approach to expanding globally, especially with the pressure from competitors? Is it better to move fast, or to stay focused on long-term success? Share your thoughts below. The next few months were a whirlwind for Ethan and his team. Their pilot program in Germany was progressing smoothly, proving the adaptability and effectiveness of their technology. But even as they celebrated this early success, the looming presence of their competitors from China was becoming harder to ignore. The race to dominate the global energy market was heating up, and every decision made in the coming weeks would determine the future of their company. It was a crisp winter morning when Ethan sat down at his desk, reviewing the latest report from Zoe. They had made significant progress in Europe, but the Chinese company was moving fast in Southeast Asia, signing partnerships with governments and local energy providers in places like Indonesia and the Philippines. Their aggressive strategy was starting to pay off. "Where do we stand on the Southeast Asia front?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with concern as he looked up from his laptop. Zoe, who had been spearheading their efforts in Asia, didn't mince words. "They've already locked down deals in 3 major countries, and we're not even in the conversation yet. We need to act fast, or we'll be playing catch-up for the next few years." Emma chimed in, her eyes glued to her screen. "We've got the technology, but they have the resources and the market access. We need to make a bold move, something that sets us apart." Malik leaned forward, tapping his fingers on the table. "We've always prided ourselves on being the innovators. It's not just about getting there first, but getting there in the smartest way possible. We've already seen what their approach looks like, and it's all about cutting corners. Our technology is built to last, and that's going to give us the edge in the long run." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "I agree. Our focus has always been on sustainability and scalability. If we're going to beat them, we need to show that our solution is the future of energy. We need to prove that we're not just another company looking to profit off quick fixes. We're creating a legacy." Zoe raised an eyebrow. "What's the plan, then?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the map of Southeast Asia on his wall. "We go big, but we go smart. We target the emerging markets that they're not paying attention to. We position ourselves as the leaders in green, renewable energy, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the future of the industry. We get governments on our side and work with local innovators to make our system a part of their infrastructure." The team nodded in agreement. It was risky, but it was their best chance at taking the lead. The first step in their strategy was to focus on 2 countries, Vietnam and Malaysia. Both nations had growing populations and increasing energy demands, but they were still in the early stages of developing sustainable energy solutions. It was the perfect opportunity for Ethan's team to step in and offer something that wasn't just a short-term fix, but a long-term solution. Zoe had been in constant communication with government officials in both countries. There was a sense of urgency in her voice when she called Ethan to deliver the good news. "We've got a meeting scheduled with the Malaysian government next week," she said. "They're interested in exploring our energy system as part of their vision for a green economy. But we have to make an impression." Ethan's mind raced. "This is it, Zoe. If we land this deal, it could be the springboard we need to enter the entire Southeast Asian market." Malik was already deep in preparation mode. "I'll get the technical team on the ground in Malaysia to perform a live demo of the system. We need to show them the potential and fast." Emma was already looking at the numbers. "We need to make sure we can meet their energy demands. I'll crunch the data and make sure our system can be customized to their needs." The day of the meeting arrived. Ethan, Zoe, Malik, and Emma stood together outside a sleek, modern building in Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia. The stakes couldn't have been higher. This was their chance to prove that their system wasn't just another American startup. It was the future of global energy. The meeting room was filled with government officials, energy regulators, and representatives from local industries. As the presentation began, Ethan stood before them, projecting confidence despite the nerves swirling in his stomach. "Our energy system is more than just a technology," Ethan began, his voice steady. "It's a vision for the future, a future where energy is clean, sustainable, and accessible to everyone. We've already proven that our system can integrate with existing infrastructure, and we've demonstrated it in the US and Europe. But this isn't just about us. It's about working with you, the local government, and the people of Malaysia, to create a solution that fits your unique needs." Zoe took over, detailing the economic and environmental benefits of their system. "We believe that by implementing our energy system, Malaysia can become a leader in sustainable energy. Not only will it reduce your carbon footprint, but it will also create jobs and stimulate growth in the local economy. And with our adaptive AI, your energy demands can be met efficiently, no matter how quickly they change." Malik showcased a live demo of the system, showing how it could balance the energy grid in real time, ensuring that power was distributed efficiently and sustainably. The room fell silent as the demo concluded, and the government officials began discussing among themselves. Ethan knew that this moment would be a turning point. They had given it their all, but now it was up to the officials to decide. After a tense silence, the lead official spoke up. Your technology is impressive, but there is something you need to understand. There are other companies, including one from China, that are offering us similar solutions. They have significant backing from their government, and they're already offering us subsidies that you cannot match. Ethan felt a pang of doubt. The Chinese company, again? Was this going to be another roadblock they couldn't overcome? But the official continued, we're not just looking for a quick fix. We're looking for a partner who shares our long-term vision for a green economy. And after reviewing all the options, we believe your system aligns with that vision. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Thank you. We are committed to being that long-term partner. With Malaysia on board, Ethan's team quickly began working on adapting the system for the region. But the race against their competitors was far from over. The Chinese company wasn't backing down, and now they had started offering even more aggressive deals in Vietnam and the Philippines. Ethan knew that they couldn't afford to rest on their laurels. Their success in Malaysia was a big win, but it was just the beginning. The competition was fierce, and every market they entered would be a battleground. What do you think about Ethan's strategy in Southeast Asia? Was it the right move to focus on emerging markets, or should they have gone for a bigger, more developed market first? Share your thoughts below. As the team began to solidify their presence in Southeast Asia, the pressure of their competition intensified. The Chinese company, with its vast resources and swift execution, had started to pose a significant threat to Ethan's vision. Every step they took in expanding their energy system seemed to be met with the looming shadow of their competitors' aggressive tactics. Yet, Ethan knew that his team's strength was in their technology and their ability to adapt. They could take on the giants, but they had to stay one step ahead, constantly innovating. Ethan's phone buzzed as he sat in his office in Kuala Lumpur. It was a call from Zoe. Ethan, we've got a problem, she said, her tone urgent. He straightened up in his chair. What's going on? It's about our system in Malaysia. We've been working closely with local engineers to integrate it with their grid, but there's been a delay. The government's energy regulator is asking for more data on the long-term sustainability of our technology. They want evidence that it can handle their grid in the next decade. Ethan sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. I thought we had all the data we needed for that. What happened? Apparently, they're worried about scaling it further. They want projections for a population growth of 20 million over the next decade. They're concerned that we're not factoring in energy consumption at that scale. Ethan leaned forward, his mind already working through solutions. All right, I want you to work with Emma and Malik on new models. We'll need to prove that our system can scale seamlessly with population growth. I'll handle the political side. Let's get this done. Zoe's voice softened slightly. I'll get on it right away. But, Ethan, if this doesn't work out, we could lose the contract here. Ethan's eyes hardened with determination. It will work. Trust me. Let's prove them wrong. Back at the headquarters, Malik and Emma dove into the technical challenge. They ran simulations, crunching numbers, and revising their models to meet the Malaysian government's stringent requirements. Emma worked tirelessly, adjusting their AI algorithms to better predict long-term energy consumption, while Malik focused on enhancing the system's adaptability to larger population densities. Meanwhile, Ethan knew that keeping the political momentum going was just as crucial as the technical aspects. He met with local government officials, reassuring them that the delay was only a minor setback. He emphasized the long-term vision of their partnership, showing them the broader benefits of their technology, not just for Malaysia but for the entire region. But even as Ethan fought to keep the project moving forward, the pressure was mounting. The Chinese competitor had not only secured contracts in Vietnam and the Philippines, but was also making aggressive overtures in Malaysia. Their strategy was simple: offer massive subsidies and incentives that Ethan's startup couldn't possibly match. Ethan felt a rising sense of urgency. They couldn't afford to lose Malaysia. It was the cornerstone of their Southeast Asian strategy. Days passed, and tension began to rise in the office. Ethan found himself checking in on the progress constantly. But then, just as things were starting to look grim, Emma called him with exciting news. "We did it, Ethan," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "We've recalibrated the system, and the projections look better than ever. Not only can we handle the growth in Malaysia, but we found a way to optimize energy distribution based on seasonal consumption patterns. This could be a game changer for the entire region." Ethan couldn't believe his ears. "That's fantastic, Emma. Let's present it to the government as soon as possible. We can't waste any more time." Within hours, they were sitting in front of the energy regulators once again, this time with solid proof that their system could scale to meet the long-term needs of the country. Zoe walked through the new data with confidence, explaining how their system could manage the projected population growth, while Emma showcased how their AI algorithms would adjust energy distribution in real time based on seasonal shifts and growing demands. The room was silent as the government officials took in the new data. Then, after a long pause, the lead official spoke. "This is exactly what we needed to see. Your system can not only meet the current needs of Malaysia, but is adaptable enough for the future. We're ready to proceed." Ethan's heart raced as he heard the words. They had done it. The deal was secure. As they celebrated their victory, Ethan received another call. This time, it was from his old mentor, Professor Randall. He had been watching the progress of Ethan's company from afar and had some surprising news. "You've done well, Ethan," Professor Randall began. "But you've got a new challenge on your hands. The Chinese company is planning to expand even further. They're not just focused on Southeast Asia anymore. They've got their eyes on Africa and Latin America, and they're already in talks with several governments. This is going to get a lot more competitive." Ethan felt his stomach churn. The stakes were higher than ever. Not only were they competing in Southeast Asia, but now they had to fend off a competitor moving rapidly into new markets. The game had just changed. "We need to be proactive," Ethan said, his voice firm. "I want us to develop a strategy for Africa and Latin America. We can't afford to fall behind." Professor Randall offered advice. "Your technology is good, Ethan, but you have to think about the people you're serving. In these regions, it's not just about the technology. It's about creating local partnerships and making sure the people feel invested in the solution." Ethan nodded, deep in thought. "You're right. We'll need to build relationships in these regions. We need to prove that our solution isn't just an American product, it's a global one. We're here for the long term." With renewed focus, Ethan called a team meeting. "We've secured our future in Southeast Asia, but now it's time to look at the next frontier. Africa and Latin America have enormous potential for growth, and we can't afford to wait around while the Chinese company locks everything down." Zoe leaned forward. "We'll need local partners. That's the only way we'll have a shot at breaking through." Emma agreed. "And we'll need to adjust our technology to meet the specific needs of each region. What works in Malaysia might not work in Kenya or Brazil." Malik, ever the strategist, had an idea. "What if we start small, with pilot programs in key cities? Show the governments and local communities how our system can be integrated without disrupting their current infrastructure. We need to prove that we're an asset, not a threat." Ethan smiled. "Exactly. We go in as partners, not competitors. Let's start working on a roadmap for both Africa and Latin America." As the team set off to map out their strategy, Ethan felt the weight of the task ahead of him. They had accomplished so much, but the road to global dominance was still long, and the challenges would only grow more complex. He could already hear the faint hum of competition in the background, but he was ready. What do you think about Ethan's decision to focus on Africa and Latin America next? Is it the right move, or should they focus on consolidating their position in Southeast Asia first? Let us know your thoughts below. With their victory in Malaysia now secure, Ethan and his team set their sights on new, even more challenging frontiers, Africa and Latin America. Both regions had untapped potential, but they also came with their own set of hurdles: political instability, differing energy needs, and local regulations that could make or break their plans. But Ethan had a vision. His company wasn't just about technology. It was about building a global movement towards sustainable energy. He knew that if they could make a lasting impact in these regions, they would truly be setting the stage for worldwide dominance. Ethan's first focus was on Africa. With rapid population growth, a wealth of untapped natural resources, and an urgent need for renewable energy solutions, the continent seemed ripe for disruption. But it was also a region with vast disparities. While countries like South Africa had relatively developed infrastructure, Much of sub-Saharan Africa still lacked basic access to reliable electricity. Ethan's plan was simple. Start in regions where they could make the most immediate impact, particularly in Kenya and Nigeria. Both countries had growing urban populations with increasing energy demands, but they also had massive rural areas that were still off the grid. This was where Ethan's team could provide the most value. We need to show that we're not just selling a product, we're offering a solution to a problem that has been ignored for too long, Ethan said, gathering his team for their first meeting on Africa. Zoe, ever the strategist, had already been in touch with local energy ministers in Kenya. We've got a meeting scheduled in Nairobi next month with the Ministry of Energy. They're looking for partners who can bring scalable renewable energy to rural areas. If we can prove that our system can serve both urban and rural areas, we'll have an edge. Emma began to sketch out the technological adjustments they would need to make. Our system is designed for urban grids, but in rural areas, we'll need to scale down and make it more mobile. We might also need to look into hybrid models, combining solar and wind with battery storage to ensure a constant power supply. Malik, who had been studying the local landscape, raised a concern. What about the political landscape? Some African countries have notoriously unstable governments. If we move in too quickly without the right local partnerships, we could get caught in the crossfire. Ethan nodded, his mind already working through these possibilities. We'll need to carefully vet our partners. NGOs, local energy startups, and even governments who are committed to real, long-term change. We can't afford to put ourselves in a vulnerable position. Kenya, with its rapidly expanding cities and a government eager to invest in clean energy, seemed like the ideal starting point. Nairobi was already a tech hub in East Africa, and the local government was looking to invest in sustainable energy projects. Zoe was already on the ground, meeting with key stakeholders in the energy sector. She had secured a meeting with the Kenyan president's office to discuss how their technology could help electrify the more remote parts of the country. The government is committed to meeting its green energy goals, but they need a partner they can trust, Zoe said in a call with Ethan. We have a window of opportunity, but it's tight. If we can land this deal, it could serve as a launchpad for the rest of East Africa. Ethan's excitement grew. This was a golden opportunity to prove their concept in a region that truly needed it. He was confident that their technology could offer Kenya not just energy, but an opportunity to leapfrog traditional energy infrastructure and build something truly sustainable. While Kenya was their first target, Nigeria was the prize. With its vast population and oil-dependent economy, Nigeria represented both the biggest challenge and the biggest reward. Its energy grid was notoriously unreliable, and the majority of the country's population still lived without consistent access to power. But Nigeria also had an emerging middle class, a rapidly growing tech sector, and an appetite for modernization. Ethan's team knew they had to act quickly to get the government on board before the competition arrived. Emma began studying the intricacies of Nigeria's energy market. Their energy needs are overwhelming. They're heavily reliant on diesel generators, which is both expensive and environmentally damaging. If we can convince them that our system is both more affordable and greener, we might have a shot. Malik added, we'll need to prove that our system can scale quickly. Nigeria's government won't take us seriously unless we show them that we can meet their energy demands in a short period of time. Just as they were gaining traction in Africa, news arrived that the Chinese competitor was also moving aggressively into the region. They had already signed deals in South Africa and were negotiating with governments in Nigeria and Kenya. Their strategy was similar to what they had done in Southeast Asia, offering low-cost energy solutions with the backing of the Chinese government. We've got a fight on our hands, Zoe said after a meeting with local officials in Nairobi. The Chinese are offering subsidies that we can't match. It's going to be hard to compete on price alone. Ethan refused to back down. We're not just competing on price. We're competing on innovation and sustainability. We offer something the Chinese can't, a long-term solution that isn't reliant on government handouts. We need to play to our strengths. Malik agreed. We've got the superior technology. If we can show that our system not only works but can transform entire economies, we'll win this. We can't let them outbid us. We need to outsmart them. While Africa was their current battleground, Ethan knew that Latin America was not far behind in terms of potential. Countries like Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico were on the verge of a major energy transition. They had already started moving away from fossil fuels, and renewable energy was seen as the key to ensuring their future. Ethan immediately turned his attention to Brazil, a country with significant energy challenges but a growing appetite for clean solutions. The Brazilian government had ambitious renewable energy targets, and local energy providers were desperate for innovative technologies to help them reach those goals. Zoe worked to establish a partnership with local authorities in Brazil. They're interested in our system, but will have to prove it can be adapted to their existing infrastructure. They're very cautious about bringing in foreign technology. Emma, who had been studying Brazil's grid structure, saw an opportunity. Their energy grid is quite diverse. We could tailor our solution to meet the specific needs of different regions, from coastal areas that could benefit from solar energy to more remote regions where wind and solar could work together. Ethan smiled, confident in their approach. We go in as partners, not vendors. We show them how our system can create new opportunities, jobs, sustainability, and energy independence. As they solidified their position in Kenya and worked on getting the necessary approvals for Nigeria and Brazil, Ethan realized something significant. They weren't just building a company anymore. They were building a global network, a network of countries, governments, and local innovators all working toward the same goal: sustainable, scalable energy solutions for the world. But the road ahead was still fraught with challenges. The Chinese competitor was relentless, and they were playing hardball. Ethan knew that this global battle for energy dominance was far from over. However, he was more convinced than ever that his company had something the world needed, and that their global network was the key to future success. What do you think about Ethan's strategy of entering Africa and Latin America next? Do you think they can beat the competition from the Chinese company? Share your thoughts with us below. The momentum Ethan and his team had built was undeniable. They had successfully penetrated the Southeast Asian market, secured pivotal deals in Kenya and Nigeria, and had positioned themselves as major players in the race for global clean energy dominance. But the true test was only just beginning. The competition was fierce, and the stakes were rising higher with every passing day. As the Chinese company strengthened its presence in Africa and Latin America, Ethan knew that simply having the better technology wasn't enough. They had to outmaneuver the competition, build stronger relationships, and find ways to make their technology indispensable in regions that were not just energy-hungry, but were also fighting for economic independence from foreign powers. Ethan sat in his office late one evening, staring at a map of Africa. The room was quiet, but the weight of his thoughts was heavy. His team had made huge strides in Kenya, but Nigeria and other nations were still proving to be challenging battlegrounds. They had just received word that the Chinese company had signed a massive deal in Nigeria, a deal that would bring solar and wind power to multiple rural communities, with a promise of local manufacturing and job creation. Zoe, who had been spearheading negotiations in Africa, was on the phone, her voice tense. The Nigerian government just approved the Chinese deal. They're offering them incentives we can't match. Their price point is lower, and they've guaranteed quick results. We've got to act fast if we want to stay in the running. Ethan didn't waste a moment. This is exactly why we need to prove that we're not just another tech company. We're a partner. Let's show the Nigerians how we can create a local supply chain that benefits them long-term. We can't compete on price alone, but we can bring something they need: sustainability, reliability, and growth. Emma, who had been looking over the numbers, nodded. I've been working on some new projections. Our technology could help Nigeria leapfrog its current energy infrastructure by integrating solar with battery storage on a national scale. It's not just about meeting demand. It's about revolutionizing how energy is distributed. Malik, always the realist, was quick to point out the obstacles. The Chinese are offering jobs and cheap infrastructure, while we're asking for time and local buy-in. Our pitch has to be more than just the technology. We need to show the long-term vision. But how do we compete when they're offering such an immediate solution? Ethan clenched his fist, his mind racing. We play the long game. We show them that our system doesn't just solve their immediate needs. It builds a foundation for their future. Let's meet with local leaders, get buy-in from key stakeholders, and prove that our model is scalable. We need to go beyond the government. We need to connect with the people. If they understand the benefits, they'll push the government to take us seriously. While Africa was growing more complex, Ethan knew that the next frontier lay in Latin America. Brazil, in particular, was the prize. A sprawling nation with diverse energy needs, Brazil's government had already set ambitious renewable energy targets, but there were still significant gaps in their infrastructure. Ethan's team had been working behind the scenes to build a localized version of their system, one that could be adapted to Brazil's unique topography and energy challenges. Unlike Nigeria, where the power grid was unreliable but centralized, Brazil's power grid was more decentralized, making it harder to implement a nationwide solution. "We're not just talking about providing power to Brazil's cities," Zoe said during one of their strategy meetings. "We're talking about connecting isolated communities in the Amazon and the Northeast. This is a huge challenge, but it could also be an incredible opportunity." Emma was excited about the possibilities. "We've already done trials with rural communities in Southeast Asia. I think we could adapt that model to Brazil. If we deploy smaller, localized systems in off-grid areas, it could be the catalyst for larger-scale adoption." Ethan agreed, but the competition was fierce. The Chinese company had made their move in Brazil too, and they had the government's ear. They were positioning themselves as the solution to Brazil's energy problems, with promises of fast deployment and long-term cost savings. "Fast is not always better," Ethan said, looking at his team. "We're not here for a quick fix. We're here for a transformation. We need to show Brazil that they can have both reliability and sustainability, a system that serves them for decades, not just a few years." But the challenges were mounting. Brazil's government had been flooded with offers, and they were leaning toward the Chinese company due to the favorable terms and the promise of immediate results. Zoe, who had been in contact with local policymakers, wasn't convinced the government was fully on board with the Chinese deal. They're concerned about long-term dependency on foreign companies. There's a growing movement here to support local businesses, and they want solutions that empower Brazilian workers and innovators. Ethan's eyes lit up. "That's our angle. We'll partner with local manufacturers, employ local talent, and make sure Brazil gets the job creation and economic independence they're looking for. This isn't just about energy. It's about building Brazil's future, and we're the right partner to do that." As the pressure mounted in both Africa and Latin America, Ethan realized that they needed to make some bold moves. They couldn't just rely on the technology they had today. They needed to innovate even further, faster. Ethan called a meeting with Emma and Malik. "We need a breakthrough, a technological leap that sets us apart from everyone else. The Chinese company might have more resources, but they can't compete with true innovation." Malik had an idea. "What if we push our AI and machine learning capabilities further? What if we could develop a system that not only adjusts energy distribution in real time but also learns from weather patterns, economic factors, and consumption trends to predict energy needs for the next decade?" Ethan was intrigued. "That's exactly the kind of innovation we need. We'll make our system smarter, more adaptable, and capable of handling future challenges in ways our competitors can't. Let's get started." As the months went by, the team's focus on innovation began to pay off. Emma and Malik worked relentlessly to develop an even more advanced version of their energy system, one that integrated real-time data, machine learning, and predictive analytics. They began testing the new system in select locations, tweaking it to ensure that it could handle both current and future energy needs. Meanwhile, Zoe's efforts in Africa and Latin America were bearing fruit. In Kenya, the government had approved a pilot project that would use Ethan's system to power a large rural community. In Brazil, they had secured a deal with a local manufacturer to build components of their energy systems locally, which not only lowered costs but also garnered support from the Brazilian government. Ethan felt the tide turning in their favor, but he knew that the Chinese company wasn't backing down. They were already pushing into more markets, and their resources were vast. But Ethan had something they didn't: a team that was relentless in their pursuit of innovation, and a global network of partnerships that was only getting stronger. As he looked out over the city of Nairobi from his hotel room, Ethan felt a surge of hope. This battle was far from over, but they were in the right position to win. Do you think Ethan's strategy of innovation and local partnerships will be enough to beat the Chinese competition in Africa and Latin America? Share your thoughts below. The pressure was building. Ethan's company had made significant strides in both Africa and Latin America, but the stakes had never been higher. The Chinese competitor was pulling out all the stops, leveraging their vast resources to secure contracts and push forward at breakneck speed. It was a battle not just for market share, but for the future of global energy. Ethan knew this would be the defining moment of their journey. Back in the United States, Emma and Malik had finally cracked the code. After months of research, testing, and late-night brainstorming, they had developed an enhanced version of their energy system. This new iteration wasn't just about solar power or battery storage. It was a comprehensive solution that integrated AI, predictive analytics, and an unprecedented level of customization. "We've just crossed a line no one else has," Emma said, her voice filled with excitement as she presented the new system to Ethan and the team via video call. "This system doesn't just meet the energy demands of a country today, it adapts and anticipates what they'll need in the future. It's truly self-sustaining." Malik added, "It's smarter, faster, and more resilient. It analyzes everything from weather data to economic activity and adjusts energy distribution in real time. It even predicts potential power shortages and optimizes usage accordingly." Ethan's eyes widened. This was the game changer they needed. They were no longer just a competitor in the renewable energy space. They were pioneers. This new system would not only elevate their company, but also position them as the undisputed leaders in global clean energy. "Can we deploy this in Africa and Latin America immediately?" Ethan asked, his mind racing with possibilities. Emma nodded. "It's scalable. We can start with smaller regions and then expand. The infrastructure is already in place in both Kenya and Brazil. All we need is the approval from local governments, and we can begin implementation." Ethan was already thinking ahead. This could be the key to outsmarting the Chinese competitor. If we can show the governments how adaptable and forward-thinking this system is, they'll choose us. It's not just about solving today's energy needs. It's about setting them up for a sustainable future. The team's breakthrough technology couldn't have come at a better time. In Brazil, the government had been leaning toward the Chinese company, primarily due to the low-cost promises and rapid deployment timeline. But the Brazilian energy ministers had become increasingly wary of long-term reliance on a foreign entity, especially one that did not promise local job creation or future-proofing the country's infrastructure. Zoe had secured a crucial meeting with key members of Brazil's Ministry of Energy. This was their chance to make their pitch, a pitch that would not only promise a state-of-the-art renewable energy system, but also bring local jobs and self-sufficiency. "We're not just asking Brazil to adopt our technology," Zoe explained to the Brazilian officials. "We're asking you to partner with us to build a sustainable, self-sufficient energy future. This isn't a one-time project. This is a long-term relationship that will empower Brazil's workers, industries, and communities for decades to come." As she spoke, Ethan couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. They had to convince Brazil's leadership that they were the only option for the country's energy future. If they failed here, the Chinese would dominate, not just in Brazil but in the entire region. Zoe, undeterred, continued, "With our AI-driven system, Brazil will have the ability to predict energy needs, adjust in real time, and ensure that even the most remote communities in the Amazon and Northeast are fully powered. This is the future of energy, and we're ready to make it happen, with you, not just for you." The Chinese competitor was not one to back down quietly. They had already signed contracts in neighboring Argentina and Mexico, and their presence in Brazil was only growing stronger. They knew they had to act fast if they wanted to keep their momentum going. Their strategy was to undercut pricing, offering incredibly low bids that made it difficult for local governments to refuse. However, the Chinese company had a weakness. They didn't truly understand the local dynamics. They offered one-size-fits-all solutions that didn't account for the vast geographical and socio-economic differences within countries like Brazil. Ethan's team, on the other hand, had a tailored approach, focusing on specific regional needs and offering technology that could scale with the country's growth. As Brazil's Ministry of Energy continued its deliberations, the Chinese company launched a media campaign, touting the speed and low cost of their solutions. They painted Ethan's company as slow and overambitious, suggesting that their promises of long-term investment were simply empty rhetoric. Ethan's heart sank when he saw the first wave of negative media coverage, but he refused to let it deter him. The Chinese may have money, but they didn't have what he had: a team that cared about more than just profits. They had a vision to change the world, and he would not let anyone undermine that. "We need to counter this," Ethan said, gathering his team together. "We can't play their game of price wars. We need to remind the world why we're here. Let's show them that the future is not about getting the cheapest deal. It's about getting the best deal for future generations." Meanwhile, in Africa, the situation was equally tense. Kenya had embraced Ethan's technology, and they were beginning to deploy it in rural areas, but Nigeria was still an uphill battle. The government had been swayed by the low-cost Chinese deal and seemed reluctant to move forward with Ethan's proposal. Zoe, however, had been working behind the scenes, building relationships with local leaders and communities. She knew that the key to turning Nigeria's energy future around lay not in the government alone, but in the grassroots level, the people who would benefit from long-term sustainable energy. She organized a series of local workshops, bringing together community leaders, energy experts, and representatives from the government to discuss the benefits of sustainable, localized energy solutions. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Local communities were eager for the jobs, economic opportunities, and energy independence that Ethan's company promised. Word spread, and pressure from the people mounted on the government. "It's time to take action," Zoe reported back to Ethan, her voice filled with excitement. "The local support is overwhelming. We just need to secure one more major endorsement from the Nigerian president, and we'll have the deal locked." Ethan smiled. "Let's make sure we do this right. We'll meet with the president and show him what we're capable of. This isn't just about electricity. It's about empowering an entire nation." The final stretch of this battle was drawing near. In both Brazil and Nigeria, the situation had reached a fever pitch. Ethan's company was on the verge of securing major deals, but the Chinese competitor was doing everything in their power to push them out. Ethan knew the next few weeks would determine everything. If they could secure Brazil and Nigeria, they would solidify their position as the global leader in renewable energy. But if they failed, the Chinese would not only win those markets, they would be set up for dominance in the entire continent of Africa and Latin America. This was their moment. The outcome of this battle would not only shape Ethan's company's future, but the future of clean energy across the globe. Do you think Ethan can beat the Chinese competitor in the final showdown? What do you think about the strategy of local partnerships and innovative technology? Let us know in the comments below. The moment had arrived. After months of hard work, strategic maneuvering, and cutting-edge innovation, Ethan and his team were on the precipice of a defining victory or crushing defeat. Brazil and Nigeria, two of the largest energy markets in the world, were on the line, and their outcomes would determine not just the future of Ethan's company but the global dominance of renewable energy. Ethan sat in the luxurious but cold conference room in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, surrounded by some of the most powerful people in the country. Zoe had done a masterful job of securing the meeting, but now the pressure was on. The Brazilian government was on the verge of making a decision that would either make or break Ethan's entire plan. Across the table, government ministers, local business leaders, and energy experts all looked skeptical. The Chinese company had come out strong, offering substantial financial incentives, quick deployment, and promises of long-term support. Ethan's team, on the other hand, had focused on building relationships with local suppliers, promising innovation and long-term sustainability. But would it be enough? Ethan cleared his throat, standing up to address the room. He could feel the weight of the moment in his chest. Every word had to count. "Thank you for meeting with us today," Ethan began, his voice calm but firm. "Brazil is a country that has always prided itself on innovation, resilience, and sustainability. We believe that now, more than ever, Brazil is at a crossroads. The choice you make will set the tone for the country's energy future for decades to come." He paused, scanning the room. The ministers were listening intently. Zoe had prepped him for this moment, and he knew that now was the time to remind them of what truly mattered. "The Chinese offer is tempting, but it's a quick fix, one that will lead to long-term dependency. We're offering you a partnership that creates jobs, fosters local innovation, and empowers Brazil to control its own energy future. Our technology doesn't just meet Brazil's needs for today, it builds the foundation for tomorrow." Ethan's eyes locked with the Minister of Energy, who had remained silent up until now. The man, a well-respected figure, was known for his pragmatic approach to politics. Ethan could sense the minister was torn, but there was a glimmer of doubt in his eyes. "The Chinese offer is cheaper," the minister said slowly, "and they promise immediate results. Your proposal will take longer to implement, and the costs are higher." Ethan nodded, understanding the concern. "We're not here to sell you a quick fix. We're here to offer Brazil a solution that lasts, one that can grow with your needs, empower your workers, and build your national energy security. And the long-term benefits will far outweigh the initial investment. This isn't just an energy project. This is an investment in Brazil's future." For a moment, the room was silent. Zoe exchanged glances with Ethan, and Emma, who had joined them for the meeting via video call, held her breath from across the ocean. Then, as if the weight of the decision had become too heavy for them all to bear, the minister finally spoke. "I think we've heard enough. We'll take your proposal into consideration," he said. Ethan felt a small victory, but it wasn't over yet. They had bought themselves time, but they still had to prove their worth. While Brazil's decision was still in limbo, Nigeria's government was moving faster. The Chinese competitor had already signed deals with key state governments, promising infrastructure improvements and local job creation. They were on the cusp of securing the national contract, but Zoe had been working tirelessly behind the scenes, and she had uncovered an opportunity. Nigeria's leaders are being pressured into a deal by the Chinese, Zoe had reported a week earlier. But there's a growing movement from local communities and smaller energy startups who want a more sustainable future. "We need to seize this moment." Zoe had organized a massive local rally in Lagos, drawing together community leaders, small business owners, and environmental advocates who were all backing Ethan's company. The message was clear. The people wanted clean energy, jobs, and a local supply chain that would benefit the economy for years to come. "We need to remind the Nigerian government that they represent the people," Zoe had said, her voice full of determination. "If we can get them to see the value of long-term partnerships, we'll have a shot at this." The day of the rally arrived, and the energy was palpable. Thousands of people gathered in the streets, chanting slogans about energy independence and local innovation. Ethan stood on stage, looking out over the sea of faces. This wasn't just a protest, it was a movement. "We are here today to show Nigeria that the future of energy doesn't have to come from abroad. We can create jobs, empower communities, and provide energy solutions that last for generations. Together, we can build a cleaner, more sustainable future for all Nigerians." As he spoke, Zoe worked behind the scenes to arrange meetings with key Nigerian officials. The rally was just the beginning. They needed to capitalize on the momentum and ensure that the government saw the power of local support. When they finally sat down with the Nigerian president, Zoe took the lead. "Your Excellency, the choice before you is clear," she said, presenting the case for Ethan's system. "You can choose a quick solution that keeps Nigeria dependent on foreign interests, or you can choose a partnership that empowers Nigerians, creates jobs, and secures the country's energy independence for the future." The Nigerian president leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "We have heard your arguments, and the people have spoken. We will move forward with your proposal. Let's build a future for Nigeria, together." Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. Nigeria, too, had chosen them. As Ethan left the meeting with the Nigerian president, he stood outside for a moment, taking it all in. Brazil, Nigeria, two of the largest and most influential countries in the world, had chosen his company over the competition. The Chinese company had been beaten, but not by price, not by promises, but by the true value of what Ethan's team had built: sustainable, locally driven, and forward-thinking energy solutions. It was a turning point, not just for his company, but for the entire energy industry. In the weeks that followed, the news spread quickly. Brazil and Nigeria's decisions were widely covered in global media, and the ripple effect was immense. Other countries, seeing the success of Ethan's approach, began to reach out for their own partnerships. Ethan's company had not just outsmarted Elon Musk, they had outsmarted an entire global energy juggernaut, and in doing so, had positioned themselves as the leaders in the future of clean energy. What do you think of Ethan's bold move in Brazil and Nigeria? Do you think local partnerships and innovation will reshape the energy landscape worldwide? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Ethan stood on the balcony of his office in San Francisco, watching the bustling city below. The energy landscape was changing, and his company was at the forefront of this revolution. Brazil and Nigeria were just the beginning. The contracts, the partnerships, and the recognition were pouring in from all corners of the globe. It was a new era, and Ethan's company was poised to lead it. But with this global expansion came new challenges. Ethan had always known that success in Africa and Latin America was just the start. The real test lay in the European market. Europe was home to some of the world's most advanced energy systems, and the competition was fierce. The European Union had stringent regulations, and the energy landscape was dominated by long-standing players. Breaking into this market would be no small feat. Zoe had spent the last few months cultivating relationships with key players in the European Union. Their strategy was clear. Use the success in Brazil and Nigeria to showcase the effectiveness and scalability of their energy solutions. But Europe's energy market was different. Unlike the developing nations that had welcomed Ethan's innovative systems, Europe had already invested heavily in green energy. Now, the challenge was to offer something truly disruptive. We need to prove that our system can integrate with existing grids, Zoe explained during their weekly meeting. Europe's energy sector is already deeply invested in wind, solar, and hydro. But none of these solutions are as adaptable or scalable as ours. If we can show them how our system can complement what they already have, we'll have a chance. Ethan agreed. The key to Europe was not convincing them that they needed renewable energy. They already knew that. It was about showing them that Ethan's technology could improve what they already had, making their system smarter, more efficient, and future-proof. I'll go to Europe myself, Ethan said, making a decision. We'll need to present our case directly to the leaders. We can't afford to wait any longer. 2 weeks later, Ethan found himself at a massive energy summit in Brussels, Belgium. The room was filled with representatives from every major European energy company, government officials, and energy innovators from around the world. It was the kind of event where only the best of the best had a seat at the table. Ethan's company was a newcomer, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. He and Zoe had spent weeks preparing. Their pitch would highlight how Ethan's technology wasn't just a replacement for existing systems, but a revolutionary upgrade. It was designed to seamlessly integrate with any grid, whether it was based on wind, solar, or hydro. The real draw was the AI-driven intelligence that could anticipate energy demand, optimize usage, and prevent outages. Zoe had secured a prime slot on the main stage, and Ethan was about to step into the spotlight. He adjusted his tie and checked the time. He could feel the familiar nerves beginning to creep in, but he pushed them aside. This was no different than any other challenge they had faced. The difference now was the global stage and the competitors. On stage, Ethan began his presentation with a story of their journey. He spoke about the success they had achieved in Brazil and Nigeria, using real-world examples of how their technology had transformed energy systems. He highlighted how the AI-driven technology wasn't just efficient. It was scalable, adaptable, and had the power to revolutionize energy markets around the world. We're not here to sell you an energy solution, Ethan said, his voice calm but filled with conviction. We're here to offer you a partnership, one that empowers you to make your grid smarter, more resilient, and ready for the challenges of tomorrow. The crowd listened intently as Ethan continued, but he knew the real challenge would come after the presentation, during the Q&A session. That's when the tough questions would come. Europe's energy market was not easily swayed. When the session ended, a representative from one of the largest European energy companies stood up. Your technology is impressive, but we've already invested billions in our existing infrastructure. How can we justify switching to your system when it's so different from what we already have? Ethan took a deep breath. That's a valid concern. But what we're offering isn't a replacement for what you already have. It's an upgrade. Our system can integrate seamlessly with your current infrastructure. It doesn't matter if you rely on solar, wind, or hydro. Our technology enhances it. It anticipates demand, minimizes energy waste, and ensures that you're always operating at maximum efficiency. He continued, in short, it's not about replacing your systems. It's about future-proofing them. The room was silent for a moment, and then murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the crowd. Ethan had done it. He had made the case for their technology in a way that no one had expected. Just as Ethan was beginning to feel a sense of victory in Europe, a new challenge emerged. The Chinese competitor, who had been a thorn in their side for months, had begun making significant inroads into Asia. They were leveraging their vast resources and political influence to secure deals in countries like India, Indonesia, and Thailand. If they were successful, they would not only dominate the energy market in Asia, but also secure a major foothold in the global energy race. "We can't afford to let them win Asia," Zoe said, frustration evident in her voice. "India alone represents a massive market for us, and if the Chinese get in first, it'll be years before we can catch up." Ethan knew that Zoe was right. Asia was the next frontier in the global energy race, and they needed to act fast. But unlike Europe or Africa, Asia's energy market was a complex web of regional regulations, economic conditions, and infrastructure challenges. Each country was unique, and the solutions that worked in one region might not work in another. "We need a tailored approach," Ethan said. "We can't treat Asia as a single market. India has one set of needs, while countries like Indonesia and Vietnam are looking for different solutions. We need to develop strategies that speak directly to each region's energy challenges." To start, they focused on India. The country had a growing population and an ever-increasing demand for energy. While India had made strides in renewable energy, its grid was still unstable, and power outages were frequent. Ethan saw this as an opportunity to introduce their technology as a solution to India's energy inefficiency. Ethan and Zoe flew to New Delhi to meet with the Indian government's energy leaders. India's energy sector was vast and varied, with a mix of state-run and private players. The country had made strides in solar energy, but its infrastructure was outdated, and many remote areas still lacked reliable access to power. "We need to convince them that our technology can help them leapfrog the current energy system," Zoe said as they prepared for their meeting with Indian officials. "We're offering them the chance to not only meet their energy needs, but to ensure that they can manage their growing demands in a way that's sustainable and efficient." When they sat down with the Indian energy minister, Ethan was ready. He knew that India's energy future depended on sustainable solutions, and their technology could be the key to solving the country's energy crisis. "We can help India become a global leader in clean energy," Ethan said, looking the minister in the eye. "We can provide energy that's not just clean but reliable, scalable, and sustainable. Our AI-powered systems will allow India to optimize its entire energy grid, anticipate demand, and prevent outages." The Indian minister looked thoughtful for a moment. "It sounds promising," he said, "but can your system scale to meet the demands of a country like India?" Ethan smiled confidently. "Yes, it can. We've already demonstrated its scalability in Brazil and Nigeria. India has the potential to be a leader in clean energy, and we're here to make that vision a reality." The meeting ended on a positive note, and Ethan felt cautiously optimistic. If they could secure India, they would have a stronghold in Asia and a major victory against the Chinese competitor. Do you think Ethan's company can outsmart the Chinese in Asia? How do you feel about their strategy to integrate existing energy infrastructure rather than replace it? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. The battle for Asia was more intense than Ethan could have ever imagined. While Brazil and Nigeria had been tough, Asia brought a new level of complexity and competition. The Chinese competitor was relentless, and they were using their political and economic influence to secure deals, especially in India. But Ethan knew they had one thing the Chinese didn't: a truly adaptable, future-proof energy solution. Ethan and Zoe's efforts in India were gaining traction. After their successful meeting with the Indian energy minister, they were invited back for a series of high-level discussions. But as they prepared for the next round of meetings, they got a call that would change everything. "We've just received word that the Chinese company has significantly lowered their pricing," Zoe said, her voice tense. "They're offering discounts and subsidies to key regional players. India is looking to cut costs, and now they have a new incentive to go with them." Ethan sighed, frustration creeping in. They had already presented their case, but the price battle was something they hadn't anticipated. Their technology was more expensive upfront, but its long-term savings were far superior. The challenge was convincing India's government that sustainability and efficiency would ultimately outweigh short-term cost cuts. "We have to pivot," Ethan said. "We need to make it clear that this isn't just about saving money. It's about future-proofing India's energy grid and creating jobs in the process." Zoe agreed. We'll emphasize the long-term benefits and the fact that our technology is designed to grow with their needs. The Chinese can't offer that flexibility. As they returned to New Delhi for another round of talks, Ethan focused on the bigger picture. The opportunity to turn India into a global energy leader, not just a participant in the renewable energy race. If they could convince India to partner with them, they would not only secure a foothold in Asia, they would set the standard for energy solutions worldwide. The room was tense as Ethan sat across from India's energy minister, senior government officials, and representatives from major energy companies. Zoe had prepared them for every possible objection, and Ethan was ready to make his case. "We understand that cost is a key factor in your decision-making," Ethan began, his tone steady but passionate. "But the question is, what kind of future do you want for India? We're not just offering you a one-time solution. We're offering a technology that will scale, evolve, and make India a leader in clean energy for decades to come." He looked around the room, making sure everyone was paying attention. "Our system will reduce India's reliance on traditional energy sources, lower operational costs over time, and create thousands of jobs. It's about building infrastructure that will withstand the demands of tomorrow's energy market." The room was quiet as the officials considered his words. Ethan knew the Indian government was under pressure to make a quick decision, but he also knew that long-term vision often triumphed over short-term gain. Still, the Chinese competitor wasn't going down without a fight. Just as the meeting was about to adjourn, one of the senior officials spoke up. "You've made a compelling case, Ethan, but we have concerns about the implementation timeline. The Chinese can deliver faster, and we're in a race against time to modernize our energy grid." Ethan didn't hesitate. "I understand your concerns, but our technology is designed to integrate seamlessly with your existing infrastructure. We can implement it in stages, so you don't need to overhaul everything at once. We're offering you a solution that won't disrupt your current systems. It will enhance them." The official nodded thoughtfully, and Ethan sensed that they were getting closer. But it wasn't over yet. There would be more hurdles to clear before India would sign on the dotted line. While India was their primary focus, Ethan and Zoe knew they couldn't afford to ignore the rest of Asia. Southeast Asia, particularly countries like Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam, were emerging as key players in the global energy market. These nations were hungry for sustainable energy solutions, and Ethan's technology had the potential to meet their needs. Zoe had already laid the groundwork in Vietnam, where the government had expressed interest in renewable energy projects. They're looking for solutions that can stabilize their energy grid and reduce dependence on imported fuel, Zoe explained. "Our system could be the key." Ethan agreed, but he knew they would have to move fast. Vietnam had already signed preliminary agreements with the Chinese company, but there were still openings. They needed to demonstrate that their technology could provide greater energy stability and efficiency than the Chinese alternative. They arrived in Hanoi, where they were greeted by the Vietnamese Minister of Energy and several high-ranking government officials. The air was thick with anticipation as Ethan began to make his pitch. "We understand the challenges that Vietnam faces in meeting its energy needs," Ethan said, "and we believe we can help you tackle them in a way that's sustainable, cost-effective, and future-proof." He detailed how their technology would enhance the efficiency of Vietnam's grid, integrate with renewable energy sources like solar and wind, and significantly reduce energy waste. The response from the officials was positive, but there were still doubts. "We appreciate the benefits you've outlined, Ethan," the Minister of Energy said, "but the Chinese company is offering us a comprehensive package that includes both technology and infrastructure development. Your proposal is interesting, but we're still not sure about the timeline and costs involved." Zoe quickly stepped in, adding, "Our approach is scalable. We're not offering you a one-size-fits-all solution. We're offering a flexible, customized plan that aligns with Vietnam's long-term goals. We can adapt to your needs as they evolve, whereas the Chinese solution is static. You'll be tied to their infrastructure, and you'll have less room to grow." The minister listened carefully, and after a long pause, he turned to his colleagues. "We need more time to evaluate both options, but I see the potential in your approach. I think we're heading in the right direction." It wasn't a final victory, but it was a step in the right direction. Vietnam was now on their radar, and the momentum was building. As Ethan's company gained ground in Southeast Asia, the Chinese competitor was becoming more aggressive. They had already secured deals with smaller countries in the region, and their influence was growing by the day. Ethan knew the Chinese would stop at nothing to maintain their dominance. Zoe received word that the Chinese had offered Indonesia a massive financial incentive to sign a long-term contract. It was clear that they were willing to outbid Ethan's company at any cost. "They're playing dirty," Zoe said, frustration lacing her voice. "But we're not going to let them win just by throwing money around." Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. "We can't match them on price, but we can outlast them on value. Our technology is the future. We just need to make sure they understand that." "Do you think Ethan's company can win the energy race in Asia despite the Chinese competition? How would you handle the challenges of scaling up in such a diverse market? Share your thoughts below." The energy race in Asia was heating up. Ethan and Zoe were facing relentless pressure from the Chinese competitor, whose political influence and financial resources were making it increasingly difficult to secure deals. Yet, despite the challenges, they refused to back down. The stakes were higher than ever, not just for their company, but for the future of energy itself. Ethan knew that to win in Asia, they had to rethink their strategy. Competing on price with the Chinese was a losing game. Their strength lay in the unique advantages of their technology, scalability, flexibility, and the ability to integrate with existing infrastructure. It was time to double down on these strengths and find a way to make their solution irresistible to countries that were hungry for innovation and sustainability. Zoe had an idea. What if we approached countries with a tailored, phased implementation plan? Instead of offering them a single large project, we could show them that our technology can grow alongside their needs. It's about building trust first and offering results in small, manageable chunks. Ethan was intrigued. "You mean start with smaller, high-impact projects to demonstrate the power of our system and build momentum?" "Exactly. We could start in rural or underserved areas where they have the most immediate need for reliable power. If we prove our worth in these areas, we'll have the leverage to scale up." It was a brilliant idea. Many Asian countries, particularly in Southeast Asia and parts of India, had large swaths of rural areas that still lacked reliable access to power. If they could win these regions over, they could use those early successes as proof points for the larger, urban markets. Zoe wasted no time putting the new strategy into motion. She reached out to the Vietnamese government to propose a pilot program that would target rural areas with inconsistent access to electricity. The pitch was simple. They would deploy their system in smaller, remote towns and villages to improve energy reliability and efficiency. If successful, the program could be scaled to urban centers and larger infrastructure projects. The Vietnamese Ministry of Energy, still torn between their options, took the bait. They saw the value in starting small and testing the waters, particularly in regions where energy demand was skyrocketing. The pilot program was approved, and the company set up operations in several remote villages in the Mekong Delta. Ethan, Zoe, and the team quickly deployed their energy solutions. Within weeks, the results were clear. Energy outages were reduced by 60%, and the efficiency of the energy grid improved dramatically. Local communities began to see the tangible benefits of the technology, and word spread quickly. As Ethan visited the villages personally, he was overwhelmed by the impact. "This is just the beginning," he said to Zoe, standing in a village that now had reliable electricity for the first time in years. "If we can change lives here, we can do it everywhere." The success of the pilot program was undeniable, and soon the news spread through the Vietnamese government. The Minister of Energy called Ethan personally to congratulate him. "You've done what no one else could," the minister said. "These results are impressive. We're ready to take this to the next level." It was a massive win for Ethan's company. The success in Vietnam gave them the momentum they needed to press forward with their larger vision for Asia. But even as they celebrated their success, the Chinese were watching closely. They weren't going to let this new competitor steal the spotlight so easily. The Chinese competitor had been watching Ethan's moves with growing concern. Their strategy had always relied on offering cheap, large-scale projects, but Ethan's approach was different. By focusing on sustainable growth and adaptability, he had begun to carve out a niche in Southeast Asia. Now, the Chinese were doubling down, trying to outbid Ethan's company with aggressive pricing and bigger promises. In Indonesia, the Chinese had made a play for a massive energy contract, offering a combination of price cuts and infrastructure development packages that seemed too good to pass up. The Indonesian government, which had been a potential partner for Ethan's company, was now being courted by the Chinese with their deep pockets and promises of rapid deployment. Ethan received an urgent call from their Indonesian contacts. "They're offering us an unbeatable deal," the voice on the other end said. "We're torn. The Chinese can move faster, and they're offering significant financial backing. But we know your technology is better." Zoe immediately jumped into action. "We need to remind them of what we offer, the long-term benefits, the scalability, and the ability to integrate with their existing infrastructure. They can't match us on that." Ethan agreed. "We need to do more than just talk about the technology. We need to show them that we're committed to Indonesia's future and that we're not just here to win a contract. We're here to build a partnership." Ethan and Zoe flew to Jakarta to meet with Indonesian officials, hoping to turn the tide. The competition was fierce, and the clock was ticking. The Chinese competitor had already secured meetings with key government figures, and their offer was hard to beat. But Ethan wasn't willing to back down without a fight. In their meeting with Indonesia's Minister of Energy, Ethan made the case for his technology in a way he hadn't before. Instead of focusing solely on the technology's superiority, he spoke about the partnership they could build together. He talked about how they could create jobs, empower local communities, and drive sustainable development in Indonesia's rural areas, all while improving energy efficiency and reducing waste. "Indonesia is on the brink of a transformation," Ethan said passionately. "We're not just offering a system, we're offering a future, one where your energy needs are met sustainably, where your people have access to reliable power, and where your economy can grow without compromising the environment. The Chinese offer you a deal, but we offer you a legacy." The Minister of Energy was visibly moved. "Your vision is compelling, Ethan," he said. "We see the potential, but the Chinese are still offering us a very tempting deal. How can we be sure your technology can deliver as promised?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "I've seen our systems in action in places like Vietnam and Brazil. We've proven that our technology works. But more than that, we're committed to seeing it through. We're not just here to install equipment and walk away. We're here to work with you every step of the way to ensure that Indonesia leads the world in sustainable energy." The Indonesian government took its time to consider the proposals, weighing the long-term benefits of Ethan's technology against the immediate gains the Chinese were offering. After several weeks of negotiations, the decision was made. Indonesia would partner with Ethan's company. "We've decided that the future of Indonesia's energy lies with your technology," the Minister of Energy announced. "We want to be leaders in renewable energy, and we believe your solution will help us get there." The victory was sweet, but Ethan knew that the real battle was still far from over. The Chinese weren't going to give up easily. But for now, they had secured another foothold in Asia, and the momentum was shifting in their favor. "Do you think Ethan's company can continue to outsmart the Chinese competitors and secure more markets in Asia? What do you think of his strategy to focus on long-term partnerships rather than just price cuts?" Share your thoughts below. The momentum Ethan had built in Asia was undeniable, but just as things seemed to be turning in his favor, an unexpected betrayal threatened to unravel everything. Ethan and Zoe had spent years building trust with their partners, but not everyone in their company was on the same page. It started with an anonymous tip that came through the company's internal messaging system. It was brief but chilling. "The Chinese are aware of your strategy. There's a leak inside your team. Be careful." Ethan stared at the message for a long time, his mind racing. He'd known from the start that the competition would get dirty, but he never expected someone within his own company to turn against them. The first thing he did was call Zoe. "We've got a problem," he said grimly. "Someone inside the company is leaking information to the Chinese." Zoe's voice hardened. "How bad is it?" Ethan hesitated. "I don't know yet, but if the Chinese are already ahead of us, we need to act fast." They quickly mobilized their team to conduct a thorough investigation, combing through emails, messages, and meeting records. It didn't take long to discover the source of the leak. One of their top executives, Richard Hayes, had been in direct contact with a Chinese firm, a direct competitor that had been trying to undercut Ethan's company in every market they entered. Richard Hayes had been with the company for nearly 5 years. He was a trusted leader with a track record of closing high-profile deals. He'd been instrumental in some of their biggest successes, and his departure now, if exposed, could send shockwaves through the company's entire operation. Ethan and Zoe wasted no time. They arranged an emergency meeting with Richard to confront him about the leak. As they sat across from him, Richard didn't look surprised. His calm demeanor only heightened Ethan's suspicions. "We know about the leaks, Richard," Ethan said, his voice steely. "We have evidence. You've been communicating with the Chinese competitor." "Why?" Richard leaned back in his chair, unfazed. "You've got a good team, Ethan. You always did. But let's face it, the writing's been on the wall for a while now. The Chinese have more resources. They're more powerful. They have the government behind them. You can't win this battle without playing their game." Zoe shot him a glare. "That's not the point. You betrayed us. You betrayed your team, your vision, and everything we've worked for." Richard's lips curled into a faint smile. "I didn't betray anyone. I was just being practical. You're outmatched. I was merely securing my future." Ethan's blood ran cold. "So you've been feeding them information this whole time?" Richard didn't deny it. "I've given them enough to stay competitive. You want to fight a giant like the Chinese? You need to understand how they think. I was preparing for the inevitable." Zoe stood up, disgusted. "You think this was about survival? You've been selling us out for your own gain. If you really cared about the company, you would have never done this." Richard shrugged. "Don't be so naive. Business isn't about ideals. It's about power. And right now, the Chinese have it." Ethan's fists clenched as he fought to stay calm. "You're fired. You're done here." Richard stood slowly, brushing off his jacket. "You'll regret this. You can't keep playing this game without making enemies." It's too late to turn back now. As Richard was escorted out of the building, Ethan and Zoe were left to pick up the pieces. The betrayal sent shockwaves through the company. If Richard had been leaking information, how much had the Chinese already learned? What damage had been done? Ethan paced back and forth in his office, trying to process everything. "We have to move fast. We can't let them get ahead of us any more than they already have." Zoe nodded. "We need to make sure that this doesn't affect the Vietnam deal. If word gets out about Richard's betrayal, it could damage our credibility in the region." Ethan's mind raced. He knew the competition was getting more aggressive, but now they were facing an even more dangerous adversary. The Chinese were playing to win, by any means necessary. After the dust settled, Ethan called a meeting with the entire team. He needed to reassure them and remind them of the company's mission. Everyone was still in shock, but Ethan knew this was a turning point. If they didn't rebuild trust and focus on their vision, the company might never recover. "Richard was one of our own," Ethan began, standing before the gathered employees. "But what he did was a betrayal. He didn't understand the bigger picture. We're not here to win by shortcuts or deceit. We're here to change the world, to make it a better place. That's what keeps us going." He looked around the room, making eye contact with his team members. "We've built something special here, and it's not going to be destroyed by one person's actions. We're still a family, and we're still united in our mission." There were nods of agreement from his team, but Ethan could sense the tension lingering. Richard's betrayal had cast a long shadow, and it would take time to rebuild the trust that had been lost. But Ethan was determined. "We've got a big job ahead of us. The competition is fierce, but we're not backing down. Together, we're going to move forward and prove that our vision is stronger than any betrayal. Let's show the world what we're made of." In the wake of the betrayal, Ethan and Zoe doubled down on their strategy. They couldn't afford to be complacent. The Chinese competitor was no longer just an external threat. They had an insider who knew their strategies, their moves, and their weaknesses. The team worked around the clock to re-evaluate their approach, analyzing every angle of the business and tightening security. They began implementing new safeguards, including stricter internal protocols and more detailed vetting of employees and partners. But they also began focusing on leveraging their existing wins. Ethan and Zoe were determined to push forward with their existing projects in Vietnam, India, and Indonesia. They focused on demonstrating the success of their pilot programs, using tangible evidence to persuade governments and private companies that their long-term vision was the way forward. Ethan also decided to take a more personal approach with the key decision-makers in each country. He wanted to show them that their commitment wasn't just about business. It was about something much bigger. He reached out to the leaders in Vietnam, India, and Indonesia personally, meeting them face to face to discuss their visions for the future. "We're not just another company," Ethan told them. "We're a partner in your journey. We want to help you achieve your long-term goals together." How do you think Ethan's company should move forward after the betrayal? What steps would you take to rebuild trust and ensure their technology remains ahead of the competition? Share your thoughts below. The battle for dominance in the Asian energy market had reached its breaking point. Ethan and Zoe had weathered countless storms, betrayal, competition, and political hurdles. But now they were facing the ultimate test. The Chinese competitor, fueled by limitless resources and backed by a powerful government, had become a force that couldn't be ignored. Yet, Ethan refused to back down. It was do or die. Ethan stood at the window of his office, staring out over the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting a fiery glow over the horizon. It was beautiful, but Ethan couldn't enjoy it. His mind was consumed by the upcoming deal in India. The competition had intensified, and the Chinese were pulling out all the stops. "They're offering everything we are, and more," Zoe said, pacing the room. "They're promising rapid deployment, deep financial backing, and large-scale infrastructure projects. We can't match them on their terms. But we don't have to." Ethan turned to face her. "I know. We have to stay true to our vision. We're not playing their game. We're building the future." Zoe's expression softened. "We've come so far, Ethan, but the stakes have never been higher. If we lose India, it could derail everything." Ethan nodded grimly. The Indian government had already expressed interest in both their technology and the Chinese offer. They were at a crossroads, and this was the moment of truth. "We're going to win this," Ethan said with determination. "But we're going to do it on our terms. We'll focus on what makes us different, the long-term vision, the commitment to sustainability, and the relationships we've built. Let's remind them why we're the right choice for India." The stakes were high. The Indian government had narrowed down its options, and it was clear that both Ethan's company and the Chinese competitor were at the top of the list. Ethan and Zoe traveled to New Delhi for the final round of negotiations, where they would have one last chance to win over the Indian officials. As they sat in the luxurious conference room, the tension was palpable. Across from them sat representatives from the Chinese competitor. Their CEO, a stoic man with a reputation for ruthlessness, and a team of advisors. The Chinese were confident, perhaps too confident. They had the advantage of wealth and government backing, but Ethan knew that their offer lacked something his company could provide: trust, innovation, and a shared commitment to sustainability. The Indian Minister of Energy opened the meeting. "Gentlemen, ladies, we are at a pivotal moment in India's energy future. We must choose a partner who can meet our needs now and in the future. We've heard both sides, and we are prepared to make a decision." Ethan stood up, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "Thank you, Minister. We understand the weight of this decision, and we're honored to be considered for such a monumental task. But let me remind you, we're not here to offer you just a project. We're here to offer a partnership that will last for decades, not just years." He paused, making eye contact with the minister. "We've proven our technology in countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and Brazil. We've shown that we can bring reliable, sustainable energy to the most underserved areas. We're not just selling you a solution. We're investing in India's future. We're committed to helping you meet your energy needs while ensuring that your economy grows without sacrificing the environment." Zoe joined him, adding, "We believe in a future where clean energy isn't just a luxury for the wealthy. It's for everyone. And that's why we're here, because India's future deserves the best, and we believe that's what we offer." The Chinese CEO smirked. "We can build faster, cheaper, and on a much larger scale. We have the resources to make this happen. You can't compete with that." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "We're not trying to compete on speed or price. We're offering something more important: long-term value. If you want a quick fix, the Chinese offer might be what you choose. But if you want a sustainable future with clean energy for generations to come, then we are the right choice." The Minister of Energy sat in silence for a moment, considering both sides. Finally, he spoke. "You're both offering impressive technologies, but the question we must ask ourselves is not what can be done today. It's what will benefit us tomorrow. India needs a partner who can help us navigate the future, not just the present. He paused again, his gaze shifting from Ethan to the Chinese team. We've made our decision. The room went silent. Ethan held his breath, not daring to move. Zoe's hand gripped his, a silent sign of support. The Minister of Energy looked up at them. We have decided to move forward with your company. Your vision for India's future aligns with ours. We believe that together, we can achieve something truly transformative. Ethan exhaled, feeling a wave of relief and triumph wash over him. Zoe's face lit up with a smile, but she quickly composed herself. Thank you, Minister. We are honored to partner with India, and we are committed to delivering on our promises. As they left the room, Ethan felt the weight of the moment settle in. They had done it. They had won the deal that would not only secure their place in India's future, but also send a powerful message to the rest of the world. The Chinese competitor, humiliated by their loss, immediately went on the offensive. They used their vast influence to spread negative press about Ethan's company, questioning their capabilities and accusing them of not being able to meet the demands of such a large market. But Ethan wasn't worried. Zoe smiled as she read the articles. Let them talk. We have something they can't compete with, trust? And our technology speaks for itself? Ethan nodded. Exactly. And now we have to prove it. India is just the beginning. The whole world is watching. News of Ethan's company winning the India deal spread quickly, and soon, other countries began to take notice. Indonesia, Vietnam, and several nations in Africa and Latin America reached out, eager to explore partnerships. Ethan's company had proven that they could compete with the giants and win. Ethan knew the road ahead would still be challenging. The Chinese would continue to fight for dominance, and other competitors would emerge. But for the first time in a long while, he felt confident. They had shown the world that innovation, trust, and sustainability were the future of energy, and they were leading the charge. Do you think Ethan's company will continue to lead the energy revolution? What do you think will be the biggest challenge they face going forward? Share your thoughts below. Just as Ethan's company was beginning to revel in the success of their recent victory in India, a new challenge emerged on the horizon. The world of clean energy was vast, and while Ethan's company had managed to fend off the Chinese competitor, a new player had entered the market, one that would prove to be a far more dangerous adversary. It began with a press release. Thorium Industries, a seemingly obscure player from Scandinavia, announced that they had developed a revolutionary new form of clean energy. Their technology, built around thorium, a far safer and more abundant alternative to uranium, promised to transform the energy landscape forever. Unlike traditional nuclear energy, thorium reactors were said to be virtually fail-safe, producing much less waste and no risk of catastrophic meltdowns. The claims were audacious. Yet, the more Ethan researched, the more he realized that Thorium Industries wasn't just another company with grand promises. They were well-funded, backed by a coalition of European governments, and had already demonstrated a working prototype of their thorium reactor. The technology was sound, and it had the potential to leapfrog everything Ethan's company had built. Thorium is the future, Zoe said as she showed Ethan the press release. It's cleaner, safer, and more efficient than anything we've got. If this takes off, it could obliterate everything we've worked for. Ethan sat back in his chair, feeling a cold sense of unease settle in his chest. They had just emerged victorious in India, but now they were facing a new kind of challenge, one that threatened the very foundation of their business. Thorium Industries' announcement sent shockwaves through the energy sector. Investors pulled back from traditional renewable energy sources, eager to jump on the next big thing. The media frenzy was relentless, with experts and analysts declaring that thorium-based reactors were the game-changer the world had been waiting for. Ethan knew they couldn't afford to ignore this. If they did, they risked losing everything. Ethan, we need to act fast, Zoe urged as they sat down with their top engineers and strategists. If we don't find a way to incorporate thorium into our portfolio, we'll be left behind. Ethan nodded, but he wasn't ready to give up on the company's vision just yet. We've built our success on innovation and trust. Let's see if we can't turn this to our advantage. We'll find a way to work with thorium, not just as competitors, but as partners. Zoe raised an eyebrow. You're thinking of collaborating with Thorium Industries? I'm thinking of offering them an alternative. We have the relationships in place, and they're new to the game. If we can convince them that our technology and their thorium reactors can work together, we might not only beat them, we might join forces with them. Ethan's instincts told him that Thorium Industries wouldn't just roll over. They had already proven that they were ambitious and capable. Still, the potential rewards of a partnership outweighed the risks. If they could find a way to integrate thorium technology into their existing operations, they could create a hybrid solution that would revolutionize energy production. Ethan and Zoe traveled to Stockholm for a high-stakes meeting with Thorium Industries CEO, Henrik Carlson. He was a sharp and strategic leader, known for his no-nonsense attitude and his ability to push boundaries. As they walked into the sleek boardroom, Ethan felt the weight of the situation. This meeting could shape the future of global energy. Henrik greeted them with a firm handshake. "Mr. Langdon, Ms. Sinclair, I must admit, I didn't expect you to come to us so quickly. Your company has had quite the run, but I think you'll find that thorium is where the future lies." Ethan smiled, trying to mask the pressure he felt. "We agree that thorium has tremendous potential. That's why we're here. We believe our technology could complement what you're doing, and together, we could accelerate the transition to clean energy." Henrik raised an eyebrow. "Complement? How so?" Zoe leaned forward. "We've been working on a large-scale deployment of solar, wind, and other green technologies, but thorium's safety and efficiency could be the final piece of the puzzle. Imagine a world where we can power entire countries with solar and wind energy, backed up by thorium reactors for consistency and reliability." Henrik tapped his fingers on the table, clearly intrigued. "You're proposing a hybrid system, one where your renewable sources work hand-in-hand with thorium to ensure stability and scalability?" "Exactly," Ethan said. "We're not here to replace you. We're here to complement your solution. Together, we can create an ecosystem that addresses the world's energy needs without the drawbacks of fossil fuels or traditional nuclear power." Henrik's eyes narrowed as he considered their proposal. "And why should we trust you? Your company has been successful, but your focus has been on renewables, not nuclear." "It's a big leap." Ethan leaned in. "Because we've demonstrated the ability to innovate, to adapt, and to deliver on our promises. We're not just selling a product, we're offering a vision. And that vision aligns perfectly with your technology. Together, we can lead the world into a new energy era." For a long moment, Henrik remained silent. Ethan held his breath. This was the make-or-break moment. Finally, Henrik spoke. "You have the right idea. A hybrid system could be the key to solving the world's energy crisis. But you need to understand that thorium is a sensitive area. It's not something you can just jump into without understanding the risks." Ethan nodded. "We're ready to take that step. We have the expertise, and we have the team to integrate this into our systems. We just need your support." Henrik's gaze softened. "I'll take your proposal to our board. If they agree, we could start working on a pilot project together. But this isn't a small decision. It's a massive shift." Ethan smiled. "We're prepared for it." A week later, Thorium Industries agreed to move forward with a joint venture. The news was met with cautious optimism, but Ethan knew this partnership would be the key to their survival in an increasingly competitive landscape. They had not only secured a foothold in the thorium market, but they had also ensured their place as one of the leaders in global clean energy. Together, they would work to create a hybrid solution that would change the game. But this was only the beginning. Do you think Ethan's hybrid solution with thorium will succeed? What challenges do you think they'll face as they integrate this new technology? Share your thoughts below. The partnership between Ethan's company and Thorium Industries had sparked a wave of excitement in the energy sector. The media buzzed with headlines like "The Future of Clean Energy," "Thorium and Renewables Join Forces," and "A New Era for Global Power," hybrid energy solution in the making. But while the world celebrated the announcement, the road ahead was anything but easy. The integration of two cutting-edge technologies, renewable energy and thorium reactors, presented a unique set of challenges, and the clock was ticking. Ethan's company had spent years perfecting its solar and wind technologies, building partnerships across the globe, and gaining the trust of governments and consumers alike. But this new venture required an entirely different skill set. They had to familiarize themselves with the intricacies of thorium energy, a field they had little experience in. To succeed, They needed to work hand-in-hand with the experts at Thorium Industries. The first step was assembling a joint task force. Zoe led the team on their side, working closely with Henrik and his engineers to create a comprehensive roadmap. Ethan spent his time in the background, making sure that the business side of the partnership ran smoothly. The stakes were high. The world was watching. But it wasn't just the technical aspects that presented a challenge. There was also the question of public perception. Thorium had great potential, but it was still a relatively unknown quantity. Many people were skeptical about nuclear power of any kind, and the idea of thorium reactors, despite being safer than traditional uranium-based reactors, still made some uneasy. The media's initial excitement over the partnership quickly gave way to skepticism. News outlets were full of questions. Can renewable energy really work with thorium? What about the risks of nuclear technology? Will the public accept thorium energy? Ethan knew that the key to overcoming this skepticism was transparency. He and Henrik sat down with several journalists, explaining in detail how thorium reactors operated, emphasizing their safety features, and showcasing the successful pilot tests they had conducted. The more people understood the science behind it, the more they would trust it. But no matter how much they tried to educate the public, they still faced resistance from some environmental groups who viewed any form of nuclear energy as a threat, even if it was safer than uranium-based reactors. There were protests, debates, and calls for stricter regulations. Ethan turned to Zoe one night after a particularly rough press conference. "It's like we're swimming against the current. People just can't get over their fear of nuclear." Zoe nodded. "It's not just about the technology. It's about changing people's perceptions. We've spent years building trust in renewable energy. Thorium doesn't have that reputation yet. It's going to take time." Despite the media backlash, progress on the technology front was moving at an impressive pace. The combined team of Ethan's engineers and Thorium Industries scientists had successfully developed a hybrid energy system that could use solar, wind, and thorium power in tandem. The reactors would provide consistent, reliable power, while the renewables could be used when the sun was shining or the wind was blowing. The breakthrough came when the team successfully created a prototype of the hybrid energy grid, a network that could efficiently distribute power from the solar panels, wind turbines, and thorium reactors, ensuring a continuous supply of energy without relying on fossil fuels. The first pilot project was set to take place in a remote region of Chile, where energy access had been a long-standing issue. The country's government had agreed to partner with Ethan's company and Thorium Industries, eager to tap into clean energy solutions that could help meet their growing energy demands. As the project moved forward, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They were on the verge of something monumental, something that could change the energy landscape forever. But they still had a long way to go. While the technological side was progressing, there was a new, unexpected challenge: political resistance. Some countries, especially in the European Union and the United States, had strict regulations on nuclear energy, and the thought of introducing thorium reactors, even if they were safer than uranium reactors, raised alarms. Environmentalists, concerned about the long-term storage of radioactive materials, began lobbying for stronger restrictions. In the United States, Congress began to push for an additional round of reviews and regulations before any thorium reactors could be deployed. Meanwhile, several EU nations began to take steps to block the project in their territories, fearing a domino effect where other countries would follow suit and embrace thorium reactors. Ethan was frustrated. They had proven the safety of the technology, but politics seemed to be getting in the way of progress. "I didn't think we'd have to fight these battles," he said during a meeting with Zoe and Henrik. "We're trying to build a future that's cleaner, safer, and more sustainable. Why is this so hard?" Henrik, ever pragmatic, replied, "The problem isn't the technology, it's the perception. People are afraid of change, especially when it comes to something as complex as energy. They don't want to take risks with something they don't understand." Zoe added, "That's why we need to continue pushing the message. This isn't about nuclear energy as it's been known. This is thorium, a technology that's fundamentally different. We've got to keep educating people, keeping the focus on the long-term benefits." Ethan and the team decided to take their message directly to the public. They organized a global summit on clean energy, inviting world leaders, scientists, environmentalists, and the media to come and see the hybrid energy system in action. The summit would take place in Chile, where the pilot project was already underway. Ethan took to the stage, presenting the groundbreaking results of the project. He explained how the hybrid system could be the answer to the world's growing energy needs, without the dangers of fossil fuels or the drawbacks of traditional nuclear power. For the first time, the world was getting a chance to see the new technology up close. But the real turning point came when they invited independent energy experts to assess the system. The experts, who had initially been skeptical, were won over by the system's efficiency, safety, and scalability. One by one, they gave their endorsement, declaring that the hybrid solution was not only viable but essential for the future. By the end of the summit, the tide had begun to shift. The skeptics, both in the media and the political realm, were slowly starting to come around. While there were still opponents to the technology, the overwhelming success of the Chile pilot project, combined with the public's growing understanding of thorium, made it clear. The hybrid future was here to stay. Ethan and Zoe stood together on the steps of the summit building, watching as the final press conference wrapped up. "I think we did it," Zoe said with a smile. "The world's starting to see the bigger picture." Ethan nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "It's just the beginning, but I believe this is the future, and we're leading it." Do you think thorium energy will eventually become mainstream? What do you think is the biggest obstacle standing in the way of its adoption? Share your thoughts below. The success of the Hybrid Energy Summit was a turning point, but as Ethan soon discovered, it also marked the beginning of a fierce battle. With the global spotlight on their groundbreaking project, the team at Ethan's company and Thorium Industries had drawn the attention of more than just the media and governments. They had caught the eye of their most dangerous rivals. While Thorium Industries and Ethan's company were making strides in revolutionizing clean energy, several of their competitors, already entrenched in the energy industry, saw their rise as a direct threat. None more so than Quantum Energy Solutions, a multinational corporation that had built its fortune on the back of fossil fuels and traditional nuclear power. Quantum Energy, led by the ambitious and ruthless CEO Victor Carter, had long held a dominant position in the global energy market. They were responsible for the energy grids in several countries and had billions invested in uranium-based reactors. When Ethan's hybrid energy solution began to gain traction, it became clear to Carter and his team that their reign was in jeopardy. "I don't like this," Victor, his top strategist Elena, said as they watched the media coverage of the Chile summit. "Thorium Energy is gaining ground, and the partnership between Langdon's company and Thorium Industries is gaining more and more support. If we don't act fast, we'll be left behind." Victor Carter's face was a mask of determination. "I'm not going to let some young upstarts change the course of the energy industry. We've been at the top for decades. We'll make sure they understand that." Elena raised an eyebrow. "How?" The press conference was a hit. Leading energy experts, including some from Thorium Industries, reiterated their support for thorium-based reactors. The tide began to turn as public sentiment shifted in favor of the new energy solution. The story began to focus less on unfounded fears and more on the promise of a sustainable future. But just as Ethan and Zoe began to feel they were gaining ground, they received word of an even more troubling development. A series of incidents began to occur that seemed too coincidental to ignore. First, a major component of their hybrid energy grid, essential for connecting thorium reactors to renewable sources, was found to have a design flaw. It was a minor issue, but enough to delay the project in Chile by several weeks. Then, a shipment of rare materials needed for the reactors was mysteriously delayed at customs, throwing off their production timeline. Zoe's suspicions grew as the incidents continued to pile up. "This is no accident, Ethan. Someone's sabotaging us." Ethan's jaw tightened. Quantum Energy. It didn't take long for their suspicions to be confirmed. One of their former engineers, now working for Quantum Energy, had been providing information to the competitor. The sabotage was calculated, designed to slow down the project and create doubts in the minds of investors and governments. Zoe's voice was a mix of fury and determination. "We need to expose them. We can't let them get away with this." Ethan was resolute. "We will. But we'll do it on our terms. We'll show the world that we're not just here to play. We're here to lead." Ethan and Zoe made a strategic decision. They would not only continue to push forward with their project, but would also take quantum energy head-on in the court of public opinion. They prepared a comprehensive report that outlined the sabotage, including the involvement of quantum energy executives. They made sure to gather irrefutable evidence of the corporate espionage. On the eve of the Chile project's official unveiling, Ethan went live with a broadcast that exposed quantum energy's dirty tricks. He showed the world the sabotage, highlighting the lengths to which quantum energy was willing to go to protect their grip on the energy market. "We're not just fighting for clean energy," Ethan said in the broadcast. "We're fighting for the future. And we won't let anyone, not even the biggest corporations in the world, stand in our way." The fallout was immediate. Quantum energy's stock plummeted as the world reacted with shock and outrage at their tactics. Governments called for investigations, and environmental groups rallied behind Ethan's company, supporting their call for a cleaner, safer future. The Chile project went ahead, and within months, the hybrid energy grid became a success. The first ever fully integrated renewable and thorium-based power system was online and running smoothly. It marked the beginning of a new chapter for global energy. Ethan stood on the roof of the facility in Chile, looking out over the sprawling landscape. It had been a long, difficult battle, but they had won. The world was changing, and they had led the way. "We did it," Zoe said, standing beside him. "We showed them that nothing can stop us when we believe in something." Ethan smiled, his eyes focused on the horizon. "This is just the beginning. Do you think quantum energy will recover from this scandal? What's next for Ethan and his team? Share your thoughts below." The hybrid energy project in Chile had proven to be a game-changer. With the world watching, Ethan and his team had succeeded not only in integrating thorium reactors with renewable energy, but also in overcoming an aggressive corporate sabotage campaign. The global media buzzed with headlines like "A New Age of Energy, Clean, Safe, and Unstoppable, and Thorium and Renewables, the hybrid solution to global power needs." But while their success in Chile had made waves, it was only the beginning. Ethan knew that the real test was just ahead. They had to scale up their technology and prove that this hybrid system could work on a global level. The stakes were higher than ever, and the world was waiting. As Ethan, Zoe, and Henrik gathered in their new headquarters, a sleek office overlooking the city's skyline, they discussed their next move. The success in Chile had given them a strong foundation, but now they needed to expand quickly. The world needed this solution, and they couldn't afford to waste time. Chile was just the first step, Ethan said, his voice steady but determined. "Now, we need to take this global. Every country with an energy crisis, that's our next target." Henrik, who had been studying the technical aspects of scaling the system, nodded. "We've demonstrated that the hybrid system works on a smaller scale. Now, we need to make it adaptable to different regions, from urban centers to rural areas. It's a matter of infrastructure and local resources." Zoe, who had been focused on the business and policy side, added, "We also need to work closely with governments. Chile was a success because the government supported the project. We need to ensure that other nations are on board before we can scale this up." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes focused. "I'll meet with world leaders if I have to, but we also need to keep pushing the narrative. Clean energy is not just an option anymore, it's a necessity. The world has seen what we can do. It's time to take the next step." The next few months were a whirlwind. Ethan's team traveled across the globe, meeting with government officials, energy executives, and environmental groups. The goal was to convince countries to adopt the hybrid energy solution, showing them that it was not just a viable option, but the future of energy. Some nations were eager to sign on. Countries in Africa, Asia, and South America, where energy access was still a major issue, saw the potential of a clean, reliable energy solution. They recognized that this hybrid system could solve their energy shortages while addressing environmental concerns. Deals were struck quickly, and plans for new projects were set in motion. But not everyone was on board. Some of the same political and corporate forces that had opposed the project from the start, including rival energy companies and some governments with strong ties to traditional energy industries, began to push back. They feared losing their influence and profits. Quantum energy, still reeling from the fallout of their sabotage campaign, attempted to regroup. Victor Carter, unable to accept defeat, launched a public relations blitz aimed at discrediting the hybrid energy solution. They accused Ethan's company of being unrealistic and risky, claiming that the integration of thorium reactors was still untested on a large scale. "We've been at the forefront of energy for decades," Victor said in one interview. "This so-called hybrid solution is a pipe dream, and the world is going to pay the price if they fall for it." Despite Quantum's efforts, Ethan and his team remained unshaken. The success of the Chile project, combined with the growing support from governments and environmental groups, helped maintain momentum. As Zoe put it, "We have the truth on our side, and the world is ready for change." As the pressure mounted, Ethan and his team focused on their first global project, a hybrid energy grid for India. The country, with its rapidly growing population and energy needs, was one of the largest consumers of fossil fuels. But India also had a massive potential for renewable energy, especially solar and wind, and was one of the first countries to express interest in the hybrid system. The project in India would be the most ambitious to date, involving the installation of both solar and wind farms, along with thorium reactors to provide backup power when renewables were unavailable. The plan was to create a fully integrated grid that could supply energy to millions of people, a game-changer for the country's energy infrastructure. The Indian government, eager to address its energy crisis and meet climate goals, gave its full support. The project was approved, and work began in full force. However, as with any major project, there were obstacles. Local communities had to be convinced of the benefits, and the team had to ensure that the hybrid system was tailored to the region's specific needs. There were also logistical challenges, from the installation of equipment in remote areas to securing the necessary resources for the thorium reactors. Ethan, Zoe, and Henrik spent months working closely with Indian officials, engineers, and environmental advocates. They made sure to address every concern, from safety to environmental impact, and even held public forums to answer questions from local residents. The day the India project went live, Ethan and Zoe stood together on a rooftop overlooking the sprawling cityscape of Mumbai, the energy grid now fully operational. The turbines were turning, the solar panels gleamed in the sun, and the thorium reactors hummed in the background, silently providing power. It was a historic moment. The first global hybrid energy grid was up and running, delivering clean, reliable energy to millions. "Do you believe it?" Zoe asked, a smile tugging at her lips. Ethan took a deep breath, watching the sun set over the city. "It's hard to believe this all started with a simple idea, but now it's real. We've just changed the future." The news spread quickly, with media outlets around the world covering the launch. The project was hailed as a breakthrough in clean energy, and it wasn't long before other countries began to take notice. More partnerships were formed, and new hybrid energy grids were planned in regions across the globe. As the years passed, the hybrid energy solution continued to expand, revolutionizing the global energy landscape. What started as a bold vision had become a reality. The world's reliance on fossil fuels began to wane, replaced by a sustainable, hybrid energy future. Quantum energy, which had once been the dominant force in the industry, was now struggling to keep up. The transition to clean energy was inevitable, and Ethan's company had become the leader in that transformation. Other energy companies, once rivals, sought to partner with Ethan's team, recognizing that the future of energy was in hybrid systems, not fossil fuels. Governments, corporations, and citizens alike saw the benefits. Air pollution decreased, energy costs fell, and the threat of climate change began to subside as more and more nations adopted hybrid energy solutions. For Ethan and Zoe, the journey had been long and challenging, but it had been worth it. They had proven that the impossible was possible. They had outsmarted the giants of the industry, disrupted the status quo, and created a new, cleaner world for future generations. As Ethan stood at the podium of the United Nations, addressing world leaders at a global summit on sustainable energy, he reflected on how far they had come. The hybrid energy solution was now the cornerstone of a new world, one where clean, reliable energy was available to everyone. "I never imagined this day would come," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But now that it has, I'm more certain than ever that the future of our planet lies in innovation, collaboration, and most importantly, belief in something bigger than ourselves. Together, we can achieve anything." The crowd erupted in applause. Ethan smiled, knowing that the world had changed and that his team had led the charge. "What do you think the future of global energy will look like?" Do you believe hybrid energy solutions will be the norm? Share your thoughts below.